Good morning. I'm Randy Hejok, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Las Vegas Sands and a proud board member of the Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. On behalf of the presenters, Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth and Las Vegas Sands, and more importantly, our supporting partners, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Greenspun College of Urban Affairs, and the Las Vegas Review-Journal, I welcome all of you to the 5th Annual Southern Nevada Youth Homelessness Summit. Many of you have been part of this summit since its inception in 2017. It's great to see all of you in person again after the long stretch of virtual-only meetings the last year and a half. For those of you joining us online, we're also very happy that we're able to bring the summit to you in a virtual environment. One thing the pandemic has taught us over the last year and a half is that we can get serious work done through video conferences. More importantly, and the most important thing for me, is that nothing can stop the critical work of all of you, our community, and organizations like Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. We kick off today's summit with the pandemic as our backdrop, along with an environment of change that also brought social justice issues to the forefront. At last year's virtual summit, we tackled these issues head on. But in November of 2020, we were still in the thick of all of our challenges. Today, our society and our community is in a place where hopefully we can start seeing the light. I know for myself, I hope that light isn't a train at the end of the tunnel, but nonetheless, we're all looking forward and can see the light. We're in a place to find perspective. We're even able to uncover new opportunities in the situations we faced. That's why our theme for this year, for Summit 2021, is The Movement Evolves. The intense environment of the last 2 years created even more vulnerability for our youth experiencing homelessness, as you'll hear about today. Yet our community didn't let that detract from the fight to end youth homelessness. We got smarter about this crisis because we faced more adversity. We found creative solutions to new problems as well as different ways to look at old problems. We are now in a position to drive the movement's work because of the light that has been revealed in dark times. I want to commend all of you, each and every one of you, because you are the force behind the movement. It was each of you that's continued supporting our community's youth through this crisis. I also want to thank the service providers, the frontline workers and first responders, our school leaders and teachers, our civic leaders and policymakers. And all of you have stepped up and, more importantly, accelerated efforts to ensure the most vulnerable people in our community did not become more disenfranchised and did not experience even more severe outcomes. It's with great admiration that I am able to have a front row seat to see the outstanding and tireless work done by our outstanding team at NPHY. The youth leaders, the ambassadors, the NPHY clients, as they work in this fight to end youth homelessness. I continue to be amazed at the energy and focus they all bring to the table. And personally, I thank each one of our NPHY team members, our young leaders, our ambassadors, some of who you'll get the opportunity to meet and see today, who remain dedicated and resilient through the ongoing crisis. The private sector also, we hope, have helped play a critical role, bringing resources to continue this important work when some of the nonprofit and public sectors faced accelerated needs combined with financial shortfalls. I'm extremely proud of being a team member of Las Vegas Sands, that we had the strength to not only continue our Sands Cares work, but also keep our support for the movement and NPHY intact. We worked with NPHY to transition our Sands Cares resources, for example, to COVID-19 specific triage, so they could continue to respond to the accelerated needs of their youth clients. Arthur Napoleon Hill wrote, "Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit." Today, we will examine and study those benefits of the crisis. We will put the spotlight on what we learned and the new solutions that emerged. We'll set new priorities for implementing the strategies outlined in the Southern Nevada plan to end youth homelessness. It's always interesting to me in terms of Arash and his team as we look at this summit. Again, it's not to mitigate youth homelessness, reduce it. It's literally to end it. And that's our goal here and continues to be the goal. We're again at a juncture as we turn our eyes toward a post-pandemic environment, and it is one of significant opportunity. We have the opportunity to renew our commitment to the movement to end youth homelessness by not only working harder, but as we've learned over the last year and a half, working even smarter. As we look ahead to next year, Southern Nevada continues to have a youth homelessness crisis, one that's predicted to worsen due to the fallout of the pandemic. But I am absolutely convinced, based upon how this community responded during the pandemic, we have unlocked new resources, opportunities, and most importantly, creativity to enhance our strategy and build better solutions. That's why we're all here today, both in person and online. Thank you for your commitment to being the movement to end youth homelessness. As we've proven over the past year and a half, together we can scale seemingly insurmountable mountains, especially and most importantly to save our youth and give them the chance they deserve to grow and flourish. Now please welcome one of my personal superheroes, Arash Ghaffari, Chief Executive Officer of NPHY, to take us further into the details.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Randy, for that introduction. Kind words, superhero, thank you. And for your support over the years as an NPHY board member. And a huge thank you to Las Vegas Sands for making this and every year's summit possible. Welcome to 2021 Southern Nevada Youth Homelessness Summit. Thank you to everyone who's joining us in person. It is wonderful to gather back together in one room again. And also, thank you to everyone who's joining us virtually, wherever you are. We appreciate you being here too. The theme of this year's summit is Movement Evolves. The past 2 years have brought us unprecedented challenges that we've never could have imagined before. COVID-19's effects on young people experiencing homelessness has been significant. Young people have had to face the mental health challenges of the threat of COVID-19, isolation, and our changing world. The support networks that young people rely on have been strained by COVID-19. Many young people have experienced sickness or death among their families, close friends, and even teachers. Young people experiencing homelessness are themselves more vulnerable to COVID-19 due to their lack of ability to self-isolate, higher rate of underlying health conditions, and disconnections from healthcare. COVID-19's effect on our society has been far-ranging everywhere in the United States, but especially right here in Nevada. For young people experiencing homelessness in Southern Nevada, this includes facing the highest unemployment rate in the nation and a dramatically shifting employment landscape. This also includes a rental and housing market that is pricing them out at exponential rates. Rent prices in Las Vegas have gone up over 20% just in the last year, making it even more difficult for young people to obtain safe and stable housing. Racial justice movements have also called more attention to the way youth homelessness does not affect all young people equally, but inappropriately affects the lives of Black, Indigenous, and other youth of color. While the past 2 years have been challenging, they've also created unprecedented opportunities for innovation. Drastic changes in our world have opened service providers, businesses, government agencies, and young people up to new ways of thinking and problem solving. Organizations and corporations have been experimenting and trying new approaches that would have been very difficult to imagine just a few years ago. This has resulted in the discovery of a variety of new promising and emerging practices, along with significant new monetary and in-kind resources that are now available to aid in the fight to end youth homelessness. Our community now has a tremendous opportunity in front of us to harness these learnings and tools to evolve the fight to end youth homelessness. And that is what today's summit is all about. All of us working together to leverage the openness to change and innovation, these new ideas and resources, to figure out how together to harness this energy and these new opportunities to meet the changing needs of our young people, advance the movement, and make substantial progress toward our ultimate goal of ending youth homelessness in our community. So over the past 5 years, since the very first Southern Nevada Youth Homelessness Summit in 2017, we've accomplished so much together as a community, from bringing new partners to the table and raising public awareness about the urgent crisis of youth homelessness in our community, to setting a North Star for a community's work by the Southern Nevada Plan to End Youth Homelessness, and implementing innovative solutions around housing and services, legislative policy, public-private partnerships, system intersectionality, and fundraising. In the past year, even with the incredible challenges we faced, the movement has continued our vital work for young people experiencing homelessness. In 2021, NPHY, movement supporters, and young leaders worked with Assemblymember Howard Watts to get Assembly Bill 197 passed, which broke down barriers for unaccompanied young people to access critical health care. As soon as this law was passed, NPHY and our community rallied to utilize this law immediately, holding COVID-19 vaccination events and getting young people experiencing homelessness protected against COVID-19, something that would have not been possible without this policy change. In addition, in 2021, our community opened 90 new beds to young people experiencing homelessness in Southern Nevada through a brand new pot of sustainable, creative funding provided by Clark County. Our panelists today will talk about both of these achievements, as well as many other accomplishments and innovations in our community in the past year. Now, we've put together a little animation to highlight and celebrate some of the incredible progress our community has made together over the past 5 years since we launched the movement to end youth homelessness in Southern Nevada in 2017. And hopefully I can do this.
No young person should have to live on the streets. Yet youth homelessness is a crisis nationwide and right here in our community in Southern Nevada. In 2017, we launched the movement to end youth homelessness in Southern Nevada to bring our community together to tackle this crisis head-on. In 2018, the movement spearheaded the region's first comprehensive plan to address the issue, the Southern Nevada Plan to End Youth Homelessness. This planning process brought together representatives from over 45 organizations, members of the public, national experts, and young people with lived experience of homelessness in order to create the plan. In the past few years, our community has accomplished so much together through the movement. We've increased education support, created new youth-dedicated voting seats on regional boards and uplifted youth voice, implemented new innovative housing models and grown housing resources, strengthened collaboration across systems and sectors, expanded our outreach efforts through youth-dedicated outreach teams, created public awareness and social media campaigns, and youth-focused pop-up events, and so much more. Through our work, 2 laws have been passed to eliminate barriers for young people. One made it easier for youth experiencing homelessness to obtain driver's licenses, ID cards, and birth certificates. The other empowered unaccompanied minors to access critical physical, mental, and behavioral health care when they need it most. Our annual summits have brought together thousands of participants to further the work of the movement. Our 2017 Southern Nevada Youth Homelessness Summit was the first of its kind in the region. It kicked off a planning process to create the Southern Nevada Plan to End Youth Homelessness. Summit 18 unveiled this plan, culminating in an immense community-wide effort to address this critical problem in Southern Nevada, where we rank among the highest in the country for the prevalence of youth homelessness. Since then, the movement has been holding annual cross-sector summits to bring the plan to life. Each year's summit features learnings and insights from experts and action-based implementation sessions to advance our work. The past 2 years have presented deep and unexpected challenges that have changed our youth's needs and circumstances. The movement is evolving to respond to these changing times, and we need you to join us. Our community has accomplished so much since we launched the movement. We are now at a unique time of both unprecedented challenges and opportunities, and it is more important than ever to come together to continue the fight to end youth homelessness in Southern Nevada. The solution to youth homelessness does not lie with any one agency, system, or sector, but with all of us. Visit our website today. We need you to be the movement.
These milestones are incredible achievements and demonstrate what we can accomplish together, especially when we're aligned around common goals from the Southern Nevada plan to end youth homelessness. Yet I am reminded that there are still homeless youth on the streets. There are still not enough beds to serve them. There are still not enough preventative and supportive services. And there are not enough permanent solutions for young people experiencing homelessness. And now, these problems are compounded by the overarching effects of COVID-19. This is why we're gathered here today and why you may feel a sense of urgency. We are rallying as a community. We have made tremendous progress. We need to harness the momentum, take advantage of new ideas and resources, listen more to young people with lived experience, and evolve our fight against youth homelessness. So for those of you who've been here multiple years, I do like to say thank yous. I don't want to leave anyone out, so bear with me. I'll get through it really quickly. But thank you so much to everyone in this room and watching virtually for your dedication over the years and making all the milestones featured in the animation possible. All of you, and many more, are the movement. Additionally, for making both today's event and the work of the past 5 years possible, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Las Vegas Sands, our co-presenter and thought partner. UNLV Greenspun College of Urban Affairs, supporting sponsor who stepped up this year to offer us their home and even lent us their dean to moderate the panel this morning. Las Vegas Review-Journal, supporting sponsors who spread the word throughout the community about the critical issue and the movement's efforts. Thank you to the panelists who will be sharing new innovations and resources this morning. Thank you to our young leaders who will be sharing essential insights this morning on how to authentically engage young people in the work to end youth homelessness. Thank you for your dedication, passion, creativity, and exceptionally thoughtful leadership throughout the planning process for this year's summit. Thank you to our esteemed guests for exciting afternoon discussion. We're excited both for your perspectives and for your time to hear and discuss our ideas. Nevada Treasurer Zach Conan, Nevada Governor's Chief of Staff Ivana Cancela. And also, a special shout out to Lauren Knott from TAC, Bill Marion for Purdue Marion & Associates, and Eliza and Jennifer from the UNLV team. Thank you to our elected officials for submitting fantastic videos, which can be found on your Summit attendee website, which you can get via the QR code on the back of your one-page program. Governor Steve Sisolak, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, Senator Jackie Rosen, Congressman Stephen Horsford, Congresswoman Dina Titus, Congresswoman Susie Lee, thank you. And thank you to our elected officials and the representatives who are joining us today here in person. Carol Del Carlo, Nevada System of Higher Education Regent, District 9, Hector Lizaola, Office of Senator Cortez Masto, and Gabby Everett, Office of Congresswoman Susie Lee. And a big thank you to NPHY staff. Your tireless and fearless dedication to our mission is incredibly inspiring. These last 2 years especially served as a testament to your perseverance and enduring motivation to serve young people experiencing homelessness. Everyone that works at NPHY deserves a shout out. Yet I want to take a moment to call out and appreciate Melissa Jacobowitz, our Chief of Development Strategy. They are the co-parent of the movement and responsible for many of its accomplishments. This year's summit, as well as the work of the movement, would simply not come together conceptually without their unwavering leadership and dedication toward the movement to end youth homelessness. Happy 10th work anniversary, Melissa. I also want to thank Lynette Rivera, NPHY's Director of Engagement and Communications, for her critical role in bringing this year's summit to life through her dedicated, enthusiastic work on the event's logistics and working closely with our young people, sponsors, donors, and other stakeholders to make today's event a success. I also want to thank Booker Reed, Layla Kirkpatrick, Jordan Berkowitz, and Allison Steinzor for your efforts around this year's summit. So I want to give you a quick overview of the day. Today's schedule of events, also again, available on your one-page program for the in-person attendees. And for virtual attendees, you can visit our website at nphy.org/summit21/attendee. At 9:35, we will present The Abolition of Normal, an educational and thought-provoking main stage performance by our young leaders. At 10 a.m., we'll have rapid-fire presentations by each of our panelists. At 11, we'll take a quick 15-minute break and reconvene at 11:15 to begin engaging discussions of our panelists moderated by Dean Ulmer. 12:15, we'll take a lunch break where box lunches will be provided with plenty of space for eating and networking outside in Greenspun Hall's beautiful courtyard. Signage and staff will direct you where to go. You can just walk out the doors and take a left and go up the stairs. At 1:45, We'll reconvene here for afternoon session where Lauren Knott from TAC will kick us off with a brief presentation on the Southern Nevada plan to end youth homelessness and how it relates to our afternoon discussion. At 2 o'clock, we'll have a very engaging discussion on Nevada's recovery with Nevada Treasurer Zach Conine and Nevada Governor's Chief of Staff Ivana Cancela. This is an opportunity for everyone in the audience here today to speak your minds and share your ideas and priorities for how the state can help us end youth homelessness in our community. And please remember that everyone's voice in this room is very important and critical to that. As I mentioned earlier, please scan the QR code in the back of your one-page program to access our website, where you can find supplemental materials for today's sessions, including welcome videos from our elected officials. And also, if you're watching virtually, you can access the same information via emails we sent out prior to today's event, or in the URL I just shared a bit ago, nphy.org/summit21/attendee. I'm excited to welcome to the stage young leaders from the Southern Nevada Homelessness Continuum of Care Youth Action Board, Young Adults in Charge, or YAC, and NPHY's Leadership Development Program, NPHY Ambassadors. Before I introduce this important segment of the day, I want everyone to know that we simply asked our young leaders what they would want to do at Summit 21, and they blew us away with their idea. Our young leaders have been working incredibly hard on this genre-defying performance. It is one part training, one part theater piece, and I'm so excited for everyone here today to see what they've been working on and to hear their insights and recommendations for how our community can more authentically engage with young people in our work. This main stage performance is a collaboration between YAC and NPHY ambassadors and was written and produced entirely by the 3 young people you'll see on stage today. Teresa Butler, Outreach Coordinator for YAC. Tyson Hall, Champion for YAC and Diplomat for NPHY Ambassadors Program. And Tavon Jenkins, Diplomat for the NPHY Ambassadors Program. This piece illustrates varied scenarios and highlights a difference between, and I quote from a young leader, authentically and inauthentically engaging with youth. Building on the theme of this year's summit, it is also a call for our community to take this opportunity to not simply return back to how things used to be, but to move forward in a new, better, and more collaborative ways. We'll be taking just a few minutes to set the stage for this performance. Please sit tight and stay in your seats. Once the stage is set, please join me in watching The Abolition of Normal.
We need more youth at the table. Oh, hi.
Hey, good morning. Hey.
Morning. Hi.
Good morning.
Oh, hi. Thank you all so much for joining.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, that looks good. Let's get started.
Yeah.
Morning.
Good morning. Hey,
How you doing?
great. Thank you. Thank you.
How was your weekend?
Oh, it's terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Another Monday.
Great. Yeah, you know.
Hi, good morning.
Oh, good
We're not
morning.
too late. We got notified about the meeting this morning.
Oh, yeah, no worries. You're here now. Take a seat. All right. There you go.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
And did you guys go?
Are there any extras? There's only one left.
Ooh, it doesn't look like we have any more. You two are just gonna have to share for now.
All right, let's get started with introductions. So your name, your pronouns, and what organization you're from. I'm Celia Walsh. I'm the communications director at YouthSeek, and my pronouns are she, they.
Hi, I'm Caleb Johnson. I'm the supervisor over at Nevada Solutions, and I'm just excited to be here. I just love youth so much.
My name is Draymond Green. I'm the Executive Director of Nevada Youth Center, or NYC.
I'm Tysican. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the champion of the Southern Nevada Youth Action Board Young Adults in Charge, or YAC. I'm also a diplomat for NPHY Ambassadors, which is an internal program for youth centered around leadership development.
And I'm Teresa. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm the outreach coordinator for YAC and getting my master's in public administration at UNLV. To give some background, YAC works closely with the Southern Nevada Continuum of Care to fulfill our mission to eradicate youth homelessness by empowering youth voice via advocacy.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We're always looking to involve more youth, since you all are the experts. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts today. Our community is hosting a fundraising event for youth. It's an all-day event with a lot of opportunities to network, and we think this would be a great opportunity for you all to tell your stories and show your support for the event.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by us telling our stories?
Well, we just mean your experiences on being homeless and how accessing services helped you get through those moments.
I feel like we could be doing more.
Right, we can be part of the planning process or even co-hosting.
It's too late to make any changes right now, so I think we're just gonna have to move forward to what we have. We already have a host.
Okay. Well, I think that there's other ways for us to make a huge impact. You know, it doesn't really seem like we're involved here.
I'm sorry, I don't know much about Yickety Yak Yak. Is it called Yickety Yak Yak? I'm usually great with acronyms. ACT, YUK, something about young adults. I agree with Caleb though. Your stories are important, and this is a great way to continue to see your faces.
Yeah, and plus it would help us raise funds too.
You know,
It's way too late to change anything anyways, so I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to keep going, okay?
Okay, so first of all, it's YAC. We should have been more involved in the planning process to determine our role in this.
We already took care of the planning. You kiddos just need to show up and tell your stories.
Okay. Are we being compensated at least?
Ooh, we'll have to work something out with that. We haven't really gotten ahead on that yet, so stick a pin in that one.
Yeah, and it looks like we're out of time for this meeting also, so we can, circle back to compensation some other time, and yeah, I'll send an follow-up email right now out on the details of the meeting.
That's great, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Jesus.
The lack of preparedness can leave youth feeling unwelcome. Is this something you've experienced? Regardless of your answer, think about how this could deter youth from wanting to be in these spaces and why it would make someone feel like their voice doesn't matter.
we're all working towards the same goal, but it cannot be done if we're in environments where we're undervalued.
Exactly. It's not enough to just call us experts. We have to be treated like experts too. We won't know how much of an impact youth can make if older people are making all of the decisions on what we can and can't do, and we're only telling our stories.
Because we're more than our stories. We helped create the first ever plan to end youth homelessness in Southern Nevada. We passed laws, too, and ultimately made substantial change in our community. Yet even with the impact we've made, we still find ourselves working with people that can't get our acronym right.
Or my name. It's difficult to feel respected when engaging with people that not only can't get your name right, but also feel the need to constantly talk over you.
So did this meeting support authentic youth engagement?
No, but let's demonstrate a meeting that does, though. morning.
Good morning.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Thanks for joining us.
Proud to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm glad you all could make it.
Me too. I'm happy I could put this in my schedule.
Yeah, we try to send invites out as soon as possible for that very reason. So now that y'all are here, I think we can go ahead and get started. There you go.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right. Does everyone get one?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Perfect. All right, let's get started with introductions. So your name, your pronouns, and what organization you're from. I'm Celia Walsh. I'm the communications director at YouthSeek, and my pronouns are she, they.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caleb Johnson. I'm the programs officer at Nevada Solutions. My pronouns are he, his, and I just love youth, so I'm excited to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Draymond Green. My pronouns are he, his. I'm the executive director of NYC, or Nevada Youth Center.
I'm Tyson. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the champion of the Southern Nevada Youth Action Board, Young Adults in Charge, or YAC. I'm also a diplomat for NPHY Ambassadors, which is an internal program for youth centered around leadership development.
Awesome.
And I'm Teresa. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm the outreach coordinator for YAC and a student at UNLV getting my master's in public administration. To give some background, YAC works closely with the Southern Nevada Continuum of Care to fulfill our mission to eradicate youth homelessness by empowering youth voice via advocacy.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We're always looking to involve more youth since you all are the experts. Our community is hosting a fundraising event for youth. It's an all-day event, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities to network. And in front of you today, we have an outline of how the day will go. And we were hoping to hear your thoughts on how you wanted to be involved, and also if you had any other ideas on how to make the day better.
I like the idea of us co-hosting.
Oh, and maybe we can even get a list of who's attending so we can use it to network.
Yes, that's great ideas. We can send over a list of organizations that's more likely to come. This is a community-wide event, so we do want to keep it open to the public.
Okay, so since it's community-wide, maybe we could get a table, we could work on recruitment, provide any available resources in the community.
Maybe you could also tell your story, since this is a great way for the community to see your faces, and it might help raise funds.
I don't really like that idea. I think it's important for us to present ourselves beyond our trauma.
Okay, fair enough.
I agree 100%. Oh, I'm sorry, Teresa. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What were you saying?
No, it's okay. Thank you. And I was just going to agree as well.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we're out of time for this meeting, but I'll go ahead and send a follow-up with details on the event, and we'll go about setting up additional meetings to prepare as well. And please let us know if there's anything we could assist with, like transportation, for example. And I did want to talk about compensation, but since we're out of time for this meeting, I'll send information about that in the email, and we can follow up from there.
Great.
Good?
Thank you.
Awesome.
See you guys soon.
Yeah, my dog ripped up my couch again. She's okay, I just gotta take her to the bed. Oh,
Hi.
hold, one of the kids just walked in. How can I help you?
What kid?
So while we're waiting for everyone else to join us, can I just say how impressed with you I am?
Thank you.
Yeah, your story was so inspiring. I couldn't believe that you actually received services and you still articulated your experiences so well. It's amazing. You never really think about what these kids can do in these situations.
What do you mean by that?
No, you just carry yourself so well. I never would have known that you were homeless.
Wow. Okay. Isn't that part of the problem? I remember how difficult it was to receive any actual support, since the way I carried myself made it easier to assume I didn't need it even when I asked for it. So resiliency was never like a choice.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Nice to see
Good
you all
morning.
back here.
Good morning.
Congratulations on a successful fundraising event.
Yeah, we made 10,000 thanks to all your hard work and dedication.
That's awesome. What are you planning to do with the funds?
Ooh, that's a great question. We haven't officially decided, so it's in a rainy day fund for now.
I think YAC should be involved with deciding how the funds are used. I started brainstorming. I was thinking we could use them for mentoring services or developing a mental health series to address burnout, maybe even assisting with technological needs or just something.
Great ideas, but we can decide that later.
Yeah, stick to that one.
Yeah, I mean, you both did so great, though. I mean, your stories were all anybody could talk about. I even teared up a little bit. I mean, thanks to your impactful stories, we were able to make some really solid connections with donors, and I'm so proud to be able to work with such resilient young people. I mean, not that you need us to boost your egos or anything. I mean, what did you think? Do you have any questions, or is there anything you need from us?
Did we make any connections? But also, we talked about compensation before. Can we have that conversation now?
We actually weren't able to secure funding for that, so we do have some gift cards. We get those over to you right away. I believe it was McDonald's and Taco Bell, so great options, breakfast or lunch.
Okay, how much is on them?
Ooh, I believe the Taco Bell was for 10 and the McDonald's is for 5, so you guys will take a pick.
I mean, do you have any other options like Visa or Walmart? I really don't go to those places.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, those are the only ones we had lying around, so we'll get to that.
So like y'all see how that wasn't right? There's a lot to be said about the difference between intent and impact.
Once again, we're more than our stories. Yet we're constantly proving that we're capable of making change, yet we're constantly being told what we can and cannot handle.
We're expected to prove ourselves, but how are we supposed to do that if we're not given the space to do so? We should be on the same team, which means we need to be setting each other up for success.
And setting each other up for success means moving away from storytelling and allowing youth to freely advocate for themselves and their community.
It means doing the work to challenge that core belief that youth are incapable and eliminating that imbalance of power.
We hope that this main stage will teach you the value of youth voice and the importance of authentically engaging with youth.
Moving forward, we want you to examine your own work and begin to define what authenticity looks like alongside youth. We're about to show you another way this scene could have gone, but please keep in mind that this is just an example, and creating a safe and collaborative space for youth engagement will ultimately be defined by the youth that you work with.
So while we're waiting on everyone else to join us, can I just say I am so impressed with you?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many setbacks that we faced at the event, but you and your team were really level-headed and came up with some really great solutions. And I really appreciate how dedicated you've been to this work.
Thank you. I'm just glad we were able to pull it off. I hope that more people start realizing that youth should have a seat at the table.
Yeah, no, I think you did just that. And a lot of people mentioned how they wanted to learn more about your work and youth engagement in general. And one of our donors even asked if they could set up a meeting to discuss more about youth partnerships. And I wanted to know if you were interested in that.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
Awesome, cool. Well, let's meet up after the meeting so we can align our schedules and send our availability over.
Okay, great.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Great to see you all back here. Congratulations on a successful fundraising event.
We made 10,000 thanks to all your hard work and dedication.
Oh, that's awesome. What do we plan to do with the funds?
That's a great question. We haven't officially decided, but we were hoping to maybe brainstorm a little bit during this meeting.
I actually started thinking already. We could use them for mentoring services or developing a mental health series to address burnout, maybe even assisting with technological needs or just something that youth can benefit from directly.
Or maybe even like moving kits or hygiene kits for the youth?
Yes.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm frantically writing down all of your ideas. I did want to talk about compensation. We were able to secure some funding, and we have checks ready for you. So if y'all just want to see me after the meeting, we'll get those right to you.
That's awesome. I'm very grateful for that.
Definitely. We did wanted to show our appreciation for all the hard work that you guys do, so thank you again.
Yeah, you both did a great job. I think this was one of the most successful events we had in a while.
I'm glad we were able to be a part of it.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to strengthening our partnership together. This is awesome.
What's the number one takeaway you want the audience to leave with?
The Abolition of Normal's goal is to encourage youth engagement and start the conversation to do so that respects and honors the work that youth are capable of doing. I hope this performance not only opens your eyes to the ways we interact with youth, but allows you to truly see the potential we have.
I mean, me personally, we talk so much about having more youth involved. It's time to actually put it into practice. So I want the audience to think and turn their thoughts into action. I would encourage anybody that got uncomfortable or started to get upset because they realized some of the things that they're doing are harmful, I would encourage them to unpack why they feel that way. Since the abolition of normal isn't meant to be seen as an attack, but rather to highlight what isn't working and to stress the fact that the way forward, the way towards meaningful and substantial change is through authentically collaborating with youth.
Thank you.
Performers, you want to come out for a quick picture? Calling young leaders and adult actors to the stage. All right. Picture. They're coming. Bear with us. Wow. I'd like to thank our young leaders. This is the power of youth voice and participation. The lessons and themes communicated by this performance could have only been created by young people themselves. Young leaders know what works and what doesn't. They are dynamic, bright, and more than capable. Authentic engagement and collaboration is paramount, and I think we all need to do a better job at building intentional, safe spaces so we can learn and create solutions with young leaders. Please join me in one more round of applause for our young leaders and adult actors. Next, I'm very proud to introduce the moderator of our upcoming panel, Dr. Robert Ulmer. Dr. Ulmer is the Dean of UNLV Greenspun College of Urban Affairs. The college is designed to engage a unique collection of interdisciplinary staff, students, faculty, to develop original solutions for producing effective urban communities. I could not think of a more fitting college to be the academic partner of the movement. Dean Ulmer asked me not to gush about him and keep it short. Sorry, Rob. Ulmer's work on organizational community renewal informs and predicts why some cities in today's headlines have struggled to prepare for terrorism and other crises, wrestled to resolve social issues of social inequity and race relations, failed to develop useful strategies to support those citizens that are marginalized and disenfranchised, and have been unsuccessful in engaging in meaningful community conversations about how to resolve their unique challenges. Conversely, his research also illustrates how effective cities can manage conflict well, can develop unique community solutions for their challenges, can be transparent and collaborative in decision-making, and can promote inclusivity and engagement throughout urban life. He has extensive experience putting these ideas into practice, having worked with the Centers for Disease Control, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and public-private companies. Dean Ulmer has been an integral part of the Southern Nevada Youth Homelessness Summit since its inception in 2017, with his college serving as a supporting sponsor of the summit for the past 5 years. Dean Ulmer is a leader in a movement to end youth homelessness in Southern Nevada, empowering his faculty to work with MPHY to produce 4 interdisciplinary research briefs on youth homelessness in our community and beyond, participating in a process to create the first ever Southern Nevada plan to end youth homelessness, supporting community work to end youth homelessness by hiring faculty that specializes in a topic, encouraging his staff to sit on community action committees with nonprofits and government partners, and urging his faculty to explore research projects that focus on a nexus between theory and practice to more effectively and efficiently end all forms of homelessness in Southern Nevada. Through all this mutual work, I am proud to call Dean Ulmer a friend and a colleague. He is a person of action with bold vision and is always prepared to deliver a good dose of that quality Canadian humor. I always love our conversations as they're insightful and hopeful, serve as sparks for ideas, and constantly validate the need for multidisciplinary approaches to equitably uplift our community. Dean Ulmer, hey, we're done. 2 more lines. I just got to present you now. Dean Ulmer, in case you did not realize who he is, he's right there. He's very loud and boisterous. Is truly an expert in how communities can not only recover from crises, but emerge from them transformed. And we're so excited to have him moderate our panel. Unprecedented opportunities, re-envisioning resources and best practices. Now you can come up.
All right.
Cement this
Oh.
friendship.
That's right. Perfect. All right. Yeah, my friend Arash Kapoori, please. Yeah, I don't hear Robert a lot. I heard it last Saturday when I talked to my parents, and they were upset with me. And so to hear Robert again and Dean, certainly it's Rob. Welcome to the Greenspun College Urban Affairs. This partnership is personal, right? This is a friendship that we have. This is personal in that youth, people in our community, need help and support and need solutions. And that's not as much professional, that is personal, and that is something that I think everybody in this room cares about and wants to see change. Nobody wants this conference or this event next year. We want to have solutions that impact people in our community, and we want to be known as a community that is equitable, that finds solutions, that is supportive, and that works together. And so when we're here today and we're having conversations about ways we can work together and ways that we can support one another, that's really what it's all about. And so in our college, educational institutions for a long time haven't been known for creating the kind of action. They've been known for case studies, they've been known for developing briefs on the extent of problems, but really haven't done as good a job as they need to do in terms of embracing challenges and finding solutions and working together with community partners. And so that's really what we're all about. And in the college, we have criminal justice, social work, public policy and leadership, communication studies, and journalism and media studies. And I can promise you that each of those schools and departments over the past 5 years, every day they think about this issue of youth and individuals experiencing homelessness. And if you think about the incredible presentation that we just had here, you can see how important communication is, right? So our communication faculty really can learn a lot, right, from the youth. It's a changing world, and it's a world in which inclusivity and engagement is paramount in how we do that. And so every day our faculty and students should be having those kinds of conversations about ways that we can work together. And if you think about the Review Journal and Las Vegas Sun and the media and how we talk about these issues, it's critical, right, that we have large-scale conversations beyond this in our media and throughout our community about ways we can work together to develop solutions around youth experiencing homelessness. We need policy. We have Teresa and we have many that you're going to hear from today that have developed policy solutions, and we need more policy solutions to be effective in this area. And as you saw in the presentation, we need youth working with faculty, working with community partners. And as I said with Arash, it's personal. He's here working with our schools and departments. We're working with our students. We're working with our faculty to develop innovative and unique solutions. Celestina, if you can just stand up for a second. Celestina, I know she's thinking, oh no, but Celestina works on a program we have in the college that focuses on an urban adventure. It engages youth and students and faculty around developing innovative solutions. And a lot of times that focuses on community problems, and it's also focused on ways in which we can develop solutions. And I can promise you the faculty don't have all of the solutions, right? Students have it, community partners have it, and the people that we work with on a consistent basis have those solutions. And so we bring actors in, we bring people in so that it's not reading case studies, it's students actually developing these solutions, and it focuses on communication, collaboration, empathy, right? Imagine that. Empathy being taught and people being able to develop those skills at a university, right? Leadership, critical thinking. These are the kinds of skills that are necessary for developing the kinds of solutions we have. We've developed new programs. We've got a Doctor of Public Policy now that's not a PhD that focuses on generating new knowledge, which is fine, but this is a practical policy-making degree so that we can work with Arash, we can work with all of you in this room to develop the practical policies that we need to make our community more effective and more resilient, right? We have an urban leadership degree that is focused not just on developing new knowledge, but it's focused on developing community leaders. I think we have Andrea Martinez here. Andrea, are you somewhere around here? She's probably going, oh no. Can you stand up for a second? So Andrea is a graduate of that program, and her master's program focused on working on developing a community garden with Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. And she's now working on workforce development solutions for youth in the community that need that support and help. And so our college and our university is really focused on developing these unique solutions, on working together collaboratively. We learn a lot from Arash and Teresa and from everybody. And so I hope you find this a place where you can come and talk to Celestina and talk to Andrea, and you can teach here, you can develop solutions here, that students find ways that we can learn from them, and we can engage them in developing these new approaches to resilience and to community solutions. So we're excited you're here. We've got an incredible panel, and we're excited about the conversation that we're going to have surrounding that. I promised Assemblymember Watts that the real conference starts here with his incredible remarks. You've already heard about the legislation that he's worked on with Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth and those partners. He's a UNLV graduate, political science, highly engaged in the university and in our community. And so please, let's give Assemblymember Howard Watts a warm welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I am Assemblymember Howard Watts. It's an honor to be here and just to present a little bit additional information on some of the state innovations that we're working on to try and expand access and remove barriers for key services. And you know, it's great to be part of this event. I got first connected with the partnership many years ago as a volunteer for Camp Anytown. I know that there are some Anytowners here in the audience. And you know, got to know staff and youth over the years, and then in the legislature got the privilege of working, unfortunately only for one session, with my friend Assemblyman Tyrone Thompson, a champion for addressing issues of homelessness in general, and for trying to address youth homelessness. And so I was glad to be able to work with NPHY and follow in my friend Tyrone's footsteps in bringing this legislation last session. So, you know, really quickly, I'm going to give a quick overview just to make sure everyone and it knows what the piece of legislation did, and has a little bit of background about it. So Assembly Bill 197 was passed in the legislative session earlier this year, and the core issue was addressing access to healthcare services for unaccompanied youth. And what we saw under the current status quo was that there was a barrier, a time barrier. Youth had to be homeless for 4 months before they could access services. I actually never got the precise answer on how that came to be, but I assume that it was what somebody decided was the best way to make sure that people couldn't pretend to be unaccompanied in order to access services by putting this arbitrary time limit. But we all know that there should be no barriers for accessing health care when you need it, for anybody, but particularly for youth and particularly for unaccompanied youth. Also, it was unclear how this would be verified. How does somebody prove that they've been homeless for 4 months? And so this created a lot of hesitancy from providers that want to provide services to youth, but also want to make sure that they're not getting in trouble for providing services to youth without parental or guardian consent in a situation where that's normally required. And then there was other language within our state laws that was kind of limiting in defining what services these youth could access. So we wanted to make sure that whether you need, physical health care, mental health care, dental care, that all types of care are available to people who need it. So that's what led to Assembly Bill 197, which I was glad to work with the partnership on. What we did was we took some of the models that we've seen in other language and in other policies and applied that here to remove some of these barriers. So we updated the law by eliminating that waiting period entirely. Instead, we established a clear process to demonstrate that a youth is unaccompanied. And it works for service providers and people that are usually helping to connect youth to those services. And the great thing about it is it also provides the clarity that's needed for a provider so that they are not put in the position of having to decide. So now there's a clear process in place. Once a service provider makes that connection, essentially, they know that they can provide the services that a young person needs. We also expanded that language to make it clear that youth can access physical, dental, behavioral, mental health care services from any health professional, so that there's no doubt about a young person's ability to get any type of care that they need. And then we also added another piece because while we had language in there that basically allowed these services to be provided, there's some part of the state law that also has providers essentially ask an unaccompanied youth if they'd like to contact a parent or guardian. And we wanted to make sure that it's absolutely clear that that doesn't become a holdup to them getting care. So we made it clear that if a young person says they do not wish to contact a parent or guardian, that access to those healthcare services cannot be delayed or denied at all. And so by taking some of this model language and model policy, we can now serve as a model for other states in how they handle their laws for access to care for unaccompanied youth in the state. And of course, I had to put a screenshot during the legislature. Unfortunately, most of the session happened virtually, and we weren't able to come together in Carson City for the presentation, but Tavon did an excellent job helping present the bill to the legislature. And you know that he did a good job because we got it passed into law. The other piece of what this policy did was address a barrier in accessing documents for homeless youth. This actually updated a law that was passed by my friend and mentor, Assemblyman Thompson, but we kind of noticed after the fact that there was something off in the language, and that basically a notarized form was required in order to get a copy of a birth certificate for free. And anyone that's ever had to deal with going to a notary, I hate going to a notary, and I very much have the privilege and means to be able to do so. So you can imagine how much of a barrier that is for homeless individuals that are trying to get their critical documents and start taking those steps forward. So we removed that provision as well. So now basically, you just sign essentially an affidavit, but you don't have to go find a notary, pay for a notarized signature in order to get access to that document. Again, just recognizing and then working to eliminate a critical barrier to accessing services. So, I think for me, there's a few key things that come to my mind having successfully passed this bill into law of what comes next. One is that we've got to educate people about the provisions of the law. I think myself and other policymakers, especially if we work really hard to introduce a policy and get it passed, sometimes there's that sigh of relief that, okay, it's done, but it's not done. Words on paper don't mean anything if they're not being followed. So we have to make sure that we get out there and that we educate everybody that's involved in this process about the law so that there is no confusion when those services are being provided, and we can actually help young people access them. I think the next thing that we have to do is identify what are some other barriers that we can break. How could we take either this language or this concept and apply it to other areas to reduce barriers to education, whether especially higher education, to housing, to employment. What are some ways that we can, again, identify those sticking points and those barriers, and then how can we use policy to set up a more streamlined process that gives everyone certainty and just helps, at the same time, just helps eliminate some of these things that are making it harder for people to move forward. And then lastly, especially for folks who know me, I have to put in a plug for funding. I think we're going to be having some additional conversations about that. But especially at the state level, I think we need to be a partner in providing the funding that is needed to expand some of these services, along with the federal government, local governments. There's a lot that we can do, but there's only so much that we can do without actually providing the resources to the community to do the work. And so those are some of the things that I'm interested in continuing to work with all of you on, and to be informed by young people. I think being able to come up here after the previous presentation is so helpful because youth voice is critical. That's how we identify these barriers, so that we're not going out and trying to make laws that don't do anything or are unintentionally unhelpful. We need to hear what the actual experiences are and what the barriers are, and then we can work together to brainstorm and figure out ways that we can address those together. So that is what I wanted to share with you all today, and I'll turn it back over to the Dean and look forward to talking a little bit more about this later.
I'll turn it back over to the Dean. There you have it. Incredible work, really outstanding. And this is where these are the kinds of change and the kinds of legislation and policy that are necessary, and the kinds of things that we're trying to develop as a community and as a movement. And it, like you said, it's not going to happen without youth, without education, without legislation, without public-private partnerships. It's just necessary. So thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing. All right, next on the docket, Tim Birch. We got a long bio from you, Tim. Let me tell you, Tim is really exactly the kind of student and professor and community partner that epitomizes, I think, the Greenspun College Urban Affairs and this movement. He is he's got many director titles at Clark County Family Services. It's incredible. He has a degree in criminal justice. He's got one in public administration then. So kind of this working across disciplines is essential. He's a faculty member in the college, but he's also then a graduate student in the college. He's a community partner when we work on youth and trauma and behavioral and mental health issues and you name it. He is another person that is just, it's not, it's a passion, right? And it's something that he really believes in. When we work with him in the college, it is hard to know whether he's teaching us or we're teaching him or we're partnering with him or he's partnering with us, but we know we're making progress. We know we're making a difference. He is an incredible human being, and I'm proud to have him next up on the docket here, Tim Birch. Please, a warm welcome for Tim.
All right. He joked because my bio is probably like a paragraph.
It's a great bio.
Yeah. Keep it short. So, look, honored to be here. I want to first of all start by introducing myself. Rob joked with my titles. I'm Human Services Administrator for the county. It means I'm over the Department of Social Service and the Department of Family Services, which means I get a really unique look at youth homelessness from both sides of the driver equation. It's an honor to be here today. I've stood and watched Arash grow this organization over the years, and it's a pleasure to be here, man. So I thank you for this format. Unique for me to be in front of Dean and our commissioner, so both my bosses are here. So one holds my funding, and the other holds my degree in his hand. So I'll try to stay on point. So what I want to talk to you, staff put together some speaking points for me, not so much to tell me what to say, but to try to make sure I don't stand here and ramble all day, because you give me a lectern and a professorship, and I'll be here an hour. So I'm assuming I go click down button here. There you go. All right, so some of the key things we don't hit for you today really is this massive investment that we're making around homelessness. I'll try to talk about the intersectionality of the issues for us. The county commission, first and foremost, needs to be recognized for stepping forward and taking 80+% of every CARES Act dollar that came into this community and putting it around basic needs and housing for our community. They did not backfill their coffers. They did not boost staff pay. They put it on the streets in the hands of the people who needed it most. When the federal government then passed the Omnibus Act and we got the emergency rental assistance, the ERA dollars, that's come through because of the investment that the commission allowed us to do in technology. We're able to pull all of the dollars from North Las Vegas, Henderson, City of Las Vegas, State of Nevada, and Clark County, and put that out into the hands of individuals to make sure they keep their housing. So we've been able to work with over 34,000 households to keep them housed. Why is that critical to youth homelessness? Because our own decade worth of public count data here around homelessness shows that a majority of adults who experience homelessness had an episode prior to the age of 18. So that one of the best things we can do to help curb and address youth homelessness is make sure that families stay properly housed from the beginning. So this translates into about $185 million worth of checks that have been written directly to constituents to make sure they stay in their housing. That also comes by way of being in partnership with Chief Judge Hardesty, who I saw announce his retirement. But we're thankful to him because we were able to get into the justice courts and intervene on over 4,000 evictions. That means families that had notices on their door that these children would be sleeping in cars. Had we not been able to step in and interrupt those evictions at the court level in the courtroom. And again, thankful to all the partners because it takes a lot of work to make those types of things happen. And the work starts in rooms like these with people like us. So some of the things we've done with this investment is to create 90 new beds for individuals who are 18 to 24. Creating the bed opportunity and finding the bed, though, are two different challenges. When I say beds, I don't mean cots in a shelter. I mean finding apartments where people can transition and have their own independent living situation. Challenge we all know right now is housing costs are up 30% year over year. The Apartment Association tells us that typically there's 11,000 vacant units in this community every day. Right now, there's only about 5,000. So you got twice as many people looking for half as many units. So we've got individuals with vouchers in hand that cannot find an available unit to move into. So I'm gonna make the plug, Help Hope Home, go to click on the .org, click on the impact tab. We are paying a bounty to recruit landlords willing to work with us, $500 signing bonus, and first and last month rent in addition to guaranteed on-time payment. So I say that for anybody that's watching as well, because we need landlords. When we talk about intersectionality, we can't do this alone. This isn't government writing a check. This is everybody, all hands on deck, university partnerships included. University partnership has been great here for us as well. Dean Ulmer, Rob, brought MGM Worldwide to the table. They're a great partnership on the Urban Leadership Program degree. We said, what more can you do? And so MGM stepped forward and worked with my team from DFS and Independent Living and created a job training readiness program for them, and then committed to show up with their recruiter here on site and guaranteed employment for any one of those young people who showed up. So individuals from the ages of 16 who got jobs in the county, the candy counter shop, up until the age of 24, who are now working, who have career paths inside the MGM Grand worldwide family of organizations because of partnerships that happen in rooms like these with people like Rob and Arash. So I want to give some due credit there as well, because employment is a key factor to keeping young people stably housed as well. And I love our summer business institutes. I love those types of unpaid internship opportunities. But I'm gonna go back to the great performance earlier. People need to be compensated for their time and talents, right? We all expect that when we show up to the job every day. We need to be able to provide that for our young people as well. To further this, the NSHE, Nevada System of Higher Education, a couple sessions ago passed a tuition waiver for any young person who has experienced a day of foster care after their 14th birthday. We continue to work to expand that. NSHE re-upped that in their last vote here in the fall, so that's very helpful to us. That expands out to community college, any university in the state of Nevada, because we don't want to just work on getting someone to an entry-level $15 an hour job, right? We want to give them a career path and help them grow so that Arash has some people on his board ready to take his job when he gets ready to retire, right? And that's what it's all about. Yeah, right? We need that succession planning, and who better than individuals with shared life experience? That is a key driver to the work we do. Step Up expansion. So Step Up is the program where if you age out of foster care, you get this ongoing continued support from the age of 18 up to 21 at the Department of Social Service of the county. We extend that to 24. Why is that critical? Well, studies show the individuals who age out of foster care, meaning they did not reunite with family or get adopted by someone, that 20% of those individuals will be homeless within the first 2 years of exiting a system, because that system has made their appointments, written their checks, paid their bills, and not really helped them achieve full independence either. Our Step Up program is a little bit different. We took it over about 7 years ago from local nonprofits and the government systems that were operating at the time, and transitioned to say it's not going to live in the family services unit. It's going to live over at social service, because these young adults are adults, and we need to be able to integrate them in these systems. I want to thank the university for helping us do a look back over that 7 years. And what we found when we do a longitudinal study is that only 2% of the young people who go through the Step Up program then wind up homeless within 5 years of exiting that program. So that means we're creating stability and hoping to break cycles to help young people not just get housed, stay housed, get jobs, come back and be community impact leaders to make sure that it doesn't happen to anybody else. So I want to give credit and thanks to my team there at Step Up as well. We're looking to expand that to include young people who age out of juvenile justice, because a lot of times young people who are couch surfing do survival crime, and they wind up with points and a probation officer, but they were escaping abuse and neglect at home. But the person that made the phone call called 911 instead of the abuse and neglect hotline. So they entered through the wrong door, and it shaped their path. Same adverse childhood experiences, different outcomes. So we're looking to address that. We'll be standing up a pilot program with the Department of Juvenile Justice this year to help young people who age out of the juvenile justice system who cannot return to family or home have a place to go, and they get the same type of supports that our foster children get. And then the foster, FYI, 'cause we love acronyms in government, so our foster youth initiative here is we've been able to and work with the Housing Authority. There's a Family Unification Program, or FUP, again, acronyms, that we as a community, we're only operating at about 70% efficiency. That means out of every 100 vouchers, only 70 were being used over the years. We were to sit down with that leadership and work that to where we are completely full, and we got people on wait lists out looking for housing as well. So good partnerships there. And again, part of that foster care program, and really for young people who have children of their own, because we see that as a reason why individuals tend to get exited out of their housing. You come home and your behavior is not aligning with the rules of my house, so you get put out. And this is a way to help with that. And I'll just take my last closing because I have the bully pulpit and I have a state elected official here to talk about intersectionality of children's mental health as well. Assembly Bill, I believe it was 487 last session, told us to start tracking the number of young people who get surrendered to child welfare because of lack of mental health services in our community. We have had 30 young people between the ages of 14 and 18 whose parents or caregivers surrendered them to child welfare over the last 60 days. These individuals are the ones we know about. There's probably 60 more out there couch surfing because they couldn't get the mental health services, the behavioral health services. Their behaviors became threatening to their caregivers. But the caregiver felt like they had no other choice but to say, please, government system, take my child, take my nephew, try to get them the help I can get them. And that's something we need to do better on as well, because no child should wind up homeless on the streets, sleeping in some places not meant for human habitation, and jeopardy their own safety because they could not get access to community mental health services. So I want to make that plea to us to say, I celebrate the work we've done, but we've got a long way to go and a lot more work to do. So thank you, Arash. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's sobering to hear that, and incredible work being done, money well spent, policy happening, programs happening, but more work needs to be done, and these are the kinds of things Celestina and Andrea and other students and faculty need to know, community needs to know, so that we can work together, develop solutions, continue to build programs, continue to develop policy, and be able to move things forward. And so, you know, you hear these things and we got to get to work. And so we'll have some time after this to have some of that conversation as well. Speaking of work, we have Dr. Vela, who's going to be coming up next. She's Chief Executive Officer of St. Jude's Ranch for Children, doing some incredible work, and a recent graduate of our Doctor of Public Policy degree as well. And I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about maybe what her policy that she focused on in that program. But here's an example of somebody that is incredibly accomplished, has done some amazing things, and she'll be able to talk about that, but also came back to increase her knowledge and also to increase her ability to impact policy and make a difference in this area. So please, a warm welcome for Dr. Vela.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm so great. I told him, please don't read my whole bio. It's so embarrassing. But it's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I am going to check the time because I promised I would only take 5 minutes, Arash. And if not, you give me the little sign. Oh, our timekeeper. Okay, good. Well, again, my name is Christina Vela, and I have the joy and privilege of being the CEO of St. Jude's Ranch for Children. I also have another title. I've given it to myself, and it is a hustler for hope. So I'm here to be real with you about, yes, we've had great successes, but there is a tremendous amount of work that we all need to do. And I'm here to kind of ring the bell as a call to action. But as a hustler for hope, I absolutely believe in these young people and their superpower of being resilient. And we, the adults, have got to come together to give them the opportunities to be their best selves. So it is time to move past a lot of the talking and get to work. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the issue and the solution. I want to remind us what the definition of homeless is. And many of us, I hope every single one of us in this room, had the privilege of sleeping in a home and waking up in a safe place this morning. I hope that for all of you. I'm grateful enough that for my children, and actually the young man that slept in my son's empty bedroom because he goes to high school with my daughter and he got kicked out yesterday, who slept in our house this morning and rode to school with her because he deserved a place to stay, right? But it is not having a home. Homelessness is not having a home. And I know that sounds so like, yeah, we get that. But let's be mindful that homelessness is not having a right to stay somewhere. Somebody says you can stay here conditionally. Being homeless is living in a place that's unsuitable. Okay? So that's the reminder. It's as simple as homelessness is not having a home, right? That's what brings us here today. Okay. But the cause of homelessness, yes, we know is complicated. There are so many reasons why young people end up on our streets. And I don't have enough time to talk about those, right? But we know what those issues are and the intersectionality that Tim talked about. But I'm gonna offer that the solution is pretty straightforward. I promise I didn't wake up like a rebel today, but every time I feel it, right? So sorry. The solution is homes. It's beds. It's houses. It's apartments. The solution is straightforward. We need places for young people to rest their head, close both their eyes at night because they know they're safe. That is what we need. That is what this solution calls for. Homes, right? We on the same page? Okay. Well, housing is the issue, but housing is the solution. Can you all say that? Housing is the issue, but housing is the solution. We need housing. And I know, like, no duh, right? We need housing. But the solution of providing homes for young people is complicated. I don't want to undervalue or minimize how challenging it is. Tim talked about it, right? How do we find landlords that want to help young people that maybe aren't at the top of their list? Well, we know COVID has made it complicated. We know luxury apartments are taking over our community because people will pay to live in really nice places, but that means they rehab old apartments that used to be opportunities for young people and families in need, and now those apartments don't exist anymore. We know the lack of options and opportunities causes system frustration. If I'm a young person today that's ready to get help, I'm finally, it takes courage to ask for help. So if I'm ready to take that help today, and I find my way to somewhere who's gonna do a housing assessment for me, and I'm ready, and then I get told, we will call you. We'll put you on a waiting list. That is absolutely unacceptable. It's the same system that if I have a drug issue and I'm ready to get help, I'm ready today. There's a little window of opportunity. I see the clarity. I'm ready to get help. And I go to drug treatment and they put me on a waiting list. The window closes and I go back to what I know. And thus the cycle continues. It's the same thing for mental health issues. We have got to identify where those gaps in services exist because it creates what people call service-resistant clients. The system creates that. Let's be real with ourselves. We do that to people when we turn them away. So the intersectionality with other issues, child welfare, homeless young families, the 2-year-old that's already bouncing around in 3 different foster homes, we gotta help them so they don't become the 15-year-old or the 12-year-old or the 22-year-old that perpetuates these cycles, right? The intersectionality is real and we cannot end homelessness without addressing other societal community challenges. The ability to create a yes system is urgent. Yes, you're ready for help and we have a solution for you. No more of this like wait list, right? It doesn't work. So I'm asking you all to have that sense of urgency. We have to create a system of yes. Yes, you're ready for help and we will find a way to make it happen. Not we're gonna put you on a wait list and we'll call you next week. That does not work, right? It doesn't work for me when I want something. It doesn't work for you when you want something. Why would we ask our young people to wait a week or 30 days before we can actually get them help? Right? Why would we do that? Well, here's the place for action. We have a lot of implementation strategies. We have a lot of plans. I'm tired, quite honestly. I love all my friends in this room. I am tired. I don't want to be another system gap analysis. I don't want to do another like mapping of services. It's time to get to work, right? COVID has shown us like we all got equal, like we realized how challenging life has been for so many of us. We have got to move into an implementation phase. We know what we need to do and we need to get to work. We have got to utilize the strategy of our young people and our elected officials and all the books that we're sitting on all of our bookshelves that tell us what the strategies are, and maybe we just haven't had the funding or we haven't had the political willpower. It's time to get to work. We need assertive and unapologetic action today. We need that collective action because human lives depend on it. This is not like this is quite literally our future. These young people and the ones that right now are living on this in this community that are feeling hopeless and helpless because they don't know where to go. So St. Jude's Ranch for Children, yes, our mission is to provide hope and healing. We have an array of services that we provide. What I can tell you is that we know we cannot do this work alone. We need each and every one of you to help us support child victims, young people in juvenile justice system, so that we can prevent young people from ever experiencing housing insecurity. It's time to stop talking about it and start being about it. I know at St. Jude's Ranch for Children and talking with Arash and NPHY and other partners, we are looking to develop affordable housing units because I'm sorry, I mean, the landlords don't want to rent to our young people as much as we pay on time when we have great ones. So anybody watching, we are grateful for the housing support we have right now, but we don't have enough. We don't have enough. So I'm going to do one last thing because I got my little finger like we're done, is I'm taking a picture of y'all. I'm your accountability partner. I know who's in the room. I'm going to blast it on social media that you all were here. My question to you is, what will you do today to make a change for these young people? So thank you.
Whew, that was a jolt of energy. And your picture's been taken. Nothing you can do about that now, right? It's exactly what we need. I mean, this is what Arash and the movement and everybody in this room is certainly about. We had a opening meeting at the start of school this year, and I disclosed, and now to a broader group, that my father-in-law has cancer, and he's certainly waiting for people that are developing solutions around cancer treatment. But we also know that youth and individuals in our community are waiting for us. Same lives, same people, not one more valuable than another, not one more important than the other. And so at a university, you'll oftentimes hear about the medical school, and we got a great medical school. You'll hear about engineering, and you'll hear about science, and those are great places as well. But they also need public policy, they need juvenile justice, they need communication. We need all of these areas to really make a difference. And the time is now. So thank you so much, Dr. Vela, for that call to action and to get us moving forward. It's really, really important. I got to meet Gabby just a little while ago, and we had a great conversation, and as academics oftentimes do, we compared our vitas, and I felt very, very bad about myself immediately. Gabby is an incredible human being, but also has an incredible educational experience, Spelman College, Northeastern in law, Harvard University. She's from Cambridge and is doing incredible work in our educational systems. This is an area that I know, Tim, you work closely with, and all of us do. Policy experts, Howard and others working closely in education. We know how important Title I and education is in our community. And so please, a warm welcome for the highly educated, prestigious educated Gabby Lamar. Thank you.
Oh boy, I'm blushing. What a warm welcome. Okay, welcome everybody. It is great to see. Oh, I haven't seen this view yet since I've been here this morning, so this is awesome. And all of you watching online, welcome. Okay, so just going to talk through, and I'm also going to try to stay to my 5 minutes, some of the work at the Nevada Department of Education here and our collaboration efforts and some innovations here. So some recent state legislation. In the 2019 session, there was SB 147 that was passed. And so this bill was great because it really removed basically what we call the seat requirement for students who are in foster care and students experiencing homelessness, where they did not have to spend a certain amount of time in a classroom, for example, but could demonstrate in other ways their proficiency in their academics. And so that, the hope and the plan is that that will then lead them to obtaining their high school diploma more quickly and would not have any barriers in the K-12 space there. And so we have, since that passage, as everybody knows, when you pass something, as one of the presenters said earlier, implementation takes time. So since then, NDE has met with our school district liaisons who are in charge of really putting in the hard work to ensure this is implemented with the intent, and have collaborated and normed on what that should look like across the state. So really excited about that. And then also more recently in this past legislative session, there was SB 354. And so this requires consideration of the effects of homelessness and suspending, expelling, or removing students from schools. So this is a school discipline law. And if some of you all are familiar with the IDEA, so Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, there's a similar protection there for discipline for students who behavior is deemed as a result of what is in their IEP, and so there's certain protections, and so that's the intent of this law here. So also excited about working across the state with stakeholders to ensure full implementation of SB 354 as well. Collaboration with school districts and other stakeholders. So I know we have some folks in the audience who may not be as familiar with this, so I wanted to ensure there was a slide that talked about the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act is what it's called. So that's a federal law that actually authorizes what is called, what we call in the education space, EHCY, so another acronym for you all, but it stands for the Education for Homeless Children and Youth Program. And each school district must have what we call a McKinney-Vento liaison, who is their primary responsibility is coordinating services to support the, again, academic and educational attainment, K-12 in this case, of youth experiencing homelessness. And what I actually failed to put here is that all states receiving this funding are also required to have that. So some of you all might be familiar with Chris James, who unfortunately recently transitioned out of the department, but he was our state coordinator for the education for students experiencing homelessness at the state level. Earlier this year, we're really excited, we held our first foster care and McKinney-Vento Summit. It was virtual, approximately 80 attendees from all across other regions. So this wasn't just educational, but just folks focused on providing solutions, best practices, brainstorming about how the adults in the system can best serve and support the education of youth experiencing homelessness. Also, with our school district liaisons, we regularly have meetings and office hours, again, to collaborate, strategize, and help resolve problems of practice. And then lastly, kind of related to the first bullet, we do have about $800,000 each year that comes to the state for McKinney-Vento, what we call the McKinney-Vento grant funding for school districts to help implement some of the strategies that is discussed when we have these regular collaborative meetings and activities to remove barriers to, again, as you can see here, identification, enrollment, retention of students experiencing homelessness in school, identification of those students, and providing supports and services to students and their families. Something that we are super excited about, thanks to advocates across the country, with the third round of the education relief funds with the American Rescue Plan, so ARP, earmarked $800 million nationally to address specifically the needs of students experiencing homelessness. And so this is referred to as ARP Homeless, or ARP Homeless Children and Youth, or ARP HCY funding. And we at NDE and across the nation see this as a real opportunity for innovation. And so we're really excited about this. Specifically, you can see there what funds per the federal government are supposed to be used for and must be used for. Again, identification. We know, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit when we have our panel, that identification, especially with the pandemic, is an even bigger issue than it was prior. So funds to be used for that. Funds to provide students the wraparound services that we talked about, mental health services to address the challenges of the pandemic, and also to enable students to attend school and fully participate in school activities, which again is also a main purpose of the McKinney-Vento law. Whether a district receives McKinney-Vento funds I spoke about a little bit earlier or not, they still must abide by certain laws that again protect the educational rights of students experiencing homelessness. So there is approximately the amount that Nevada received. There is the amount that will be allocated to school districts for various strategies, interventions, and activities, again, to be innovative. So we've seen some really great things in the school district plans. There's a need for people, for example. There are districts that are hiring counselors that will be specific for these specific for the needs of students experiencing homelessness. They are different centers and wraparound services that districts are providing with these new funds. And then also the state level. So we get to reserve some state funding for state level activities. We are super excited about that. And so some things that we are going to do is a statewide needs assessment of the educational needs of students experiencing homelessness, because we want to ensure that we are being strategic. And so sure, we hear anecdotes and things, but in order for us to really create change at a systemic level, we want to ensure that across the state we are understanding the needs of our youth. Partnering with CBOs throughout Nevada to assist us in the identification and supports of homeless youth and of youth experiencing homelessness, excuse me. And this is Arash, what I was talking about earlier. So we will talk some more about that and others across the state as well, and providing technical assistance and professional development. So again, with our stakeholders, this was a need. We heard we really need to provide professional training to adults in the system to really understand the rights and the needs of students experiencing homelessness in the education setting. And so some other things that are not on here is having and encouraging our school districts and also the state to have a youth council to help advise us on decisions that we make, and just some other things. But we wanted to highlight some things there. So again, really excited about that. And here are some resources in the K-12 space for youth experiencing homelessness and my contact information. And so those are some links that we think will be helpful, and happy to answer any questions. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you all.
Gabby, that's an incredible presentation. I would also welcome you. We do have 2 doctoral programs, actually 3 doctoral programs. You want to put a capper on that education, right? So we've got Tim Birch you can talk to about the PhD, right? And so anyways, we could learn a lot from you. It would be fantastic. But clearly, education is really impactful when it comes to youth experiencing homelessness and moving our agenda forward. Next, we heard a little bit from Tim again, and Tim, his name's coming up a lot, but about Clark County and what a great job they've done in really focusing their efforts and their resources in the appropriate way. We're grateful today to have Commissioner Justin Jones with us. He's doing an incredible job in really supporting the movement and supporting it from a policy perspective. I noticed on his kind of outline here, again, highly educated. Come on, Justin, feel free to come up here. But I did notice you were editor of a journal, and I can only imagine the trauma that you went through editing a journal, because as somebody who's done this in academic circles, wow, congratulations. I'm glad you got through it. We do have a trauma certificate if you need any help on that level. But welcome to the summit, and we look forward to your remarks. Sorry, Howard left his, yeah.
Thank you, Dean. I met Julie when she was 11 years old. She came into the foster care system. She had an adoptive placement, and her adoptive placement decided they didn't want her because they accused her of having shut her brother's hand in the door of a car. I volunteered for Legal Aid Center's Children Attorney Project, and so I represented Julie throughout court proceedings that ended up lasting 8 years. She bounced around through foster care. She was at Child Haven multiple times. She ran away from Child Haven multiple times. She spent time at St. Jude's Ranch. She ran away from St. Jude's Ranch also. She was trafficked. She ended up in a meth house. She was at Shannon West for a while, probably the happiest time that I got to know her. And it is Julie's experience that really shaped my interest in youth homelessness. I was fortunate to join the Board of County Commissions 3 years ago, and immediately it was clear that that board was committed to addressing homelessness. I think the month after I joined the board in January of 2019, we had an agenda item on to talk about what we're going to do with the $12 million plus that the county collects from marijuana fees. Before, it had just been going into our general fund and got distributed however it got distributed. And our resolution on the county commission was that we wanted to use 100% of those fees that we were collecting to address one problem, which was homelessness. And we didn't just sit around. We all know government's slow. What we asked Tim and his crew to do is come back in 45 days with concrete solutions about how we could address homelessness as quick as possible. And fortunately, Tim has an amazing team over there. They pulled together their resources, and they came back with concrete solutions that included immediately addressing youth homelessness, funding places like Shannon West, funding family support for families that had kids that were medically fragile. We wanted to make sure that the youth and the families were at the top of that list. The nice thing about those types of funds is that we can basically do whatever we want with them. As some of you probably know, federal funds are great, but they're very difficult to deal with because they have lots of strings attached. They have lots of reporting problems and issues they have to do, and it's frustrating sometimes. So we're able to use that to really fill those gaps where those federal funds that flow through the continuum of care, and there's lots of people that are involved in that, and lots of great things, but there are a lot of things that can't be funded as quickly and as adeptly with federal funds. We funded also an expansion of our mobile crisis unit. We know that there are many situations out there where you can't get to the problem as quick as you want. And so our MCIT teams are out there in the field responding immediately to those circumstances where youth and families need it most. But that's not all we did. I guess I should put my little thing up there. There we go, because apparently you have to have slides, right? So fortunately, the legislature in 2019 was addressing a lot of issues that included education, trying to fund education more, addressing affordable housing, et cetera. And at the end of the day, there weren't the votes in the legislature to increase funding by increasing taxes in the way that they had hoped to. But the legislature can also pass on the taxation authority to the local jurisdictions. And so under AB 309, the legislature passed on to the county the ability to use sales tax funds for some very specified types of work. That included homelessness, education, truancy prevention. And so within months after the legislature passed that legislation on, thank you, Assemblyman Watts, for championing that, we took up that issue. Now, y'all know that I got to get elected, all my colleagues got to get elected. How many of you think that raising taxes is politically popular? No, it's not. But again, we put our money where our mouth is at the county. And that board raised sales tax in order to specifically address truancy prevention and homelessness. And again, went back to Tim and said, hey, come up with programs as fast as you can. And as a result of those efforts, raising those sales tax in order to fund those programs, we were able to fund an amazing program, TPOP, to address truancy prevention. Why is that important to homelessness? Because we know if people get into the system, if kids get into the system, they're more likely to end up homeless, right? If they're in our juvenile justice system, if they end up in our criminal justice system, they're more likely to end up homeless as youth or when they age out. And so TPOP has been an amazing program that's continued to expand along with our Harbor program and has been recognized both locally and nationally for the work that it has done. We've also been able to use those AB 309 dollars to fund additional homelessness programs. Now, again, talking about funding, we all know that, as Tim mentioned, there were a lot of money that's come into local governments as of late. Clark County was fortunate to have $440 million allotted through the American Recovery Plan. And there are specified areas that the local governments can use that funding for. And one of those is affordable housing. And again, this was an issue that we had already been working on, already found those flexible dollars for. And as we looked at what was important, going out into the public and asking people how they wanted us to use that $440 million, it was clear that affordable housing was something that not only was important to us as county commissioners, but it was also important to the public. And so as a result of that, the county commission voted last July to devote $157 million out of our $440 million. That's a third to address affordable housing. We opened our grant application process and we were able to take in some amazing grant opportunities, including from NPHY, St. Jude's Ranch. And while I can't say here, because it's not my decision alone, that those types of projects are going to get funded, I can tell you that youth homelessness is definitely going to play an important role in what we do as we go forward in making those decisions with regards to our ARP funds. We can't do this alone. As everyone here will acknowledge, government's great, but without the types of organizations, nonprofits, like NPHY, like St. Jude's Ranch, like many of the others that are represented here, we can't do that work. We just don't have the staff at county to address all of the needs that we have. And so I want to say thank you to all of you who are here today, dealing with the issues on a daily basis. And I want to say thank you to Tim and his team, the county. They do amazing work and are out in the field day in, day out, even when it's hard. We've got issues. Child having is tough. We have kids, as Tim mentioned, we have families that are dropping off their kids because they just can't or won't deal with them anymore. And that's sad. And so I urge you all to get involved and make sure that we can be successful in reducing youth homelessness to zero. Thank you.
It's dangerous up here. Commissioner Jones, thank you very much. And as you're listening here, you see the partnerships, you see people working together, engaged. You also hear that people in policy areas and in government are directing funds or see this as a priority. real progress is being made. And as your initial story, these are real people experiencing, they're not statistics, they're real people experiencing incredible challenges. And as we heard earlier, the time is now, right? If you were experiencing these kinds of things, you wouldn't want to hear about delays or things like that. You'd want that kind of support and would demand that kind of support. So we have Teresa Butler now, who, as we've talked about other graduate students in the college, and how important they are to our learning and to our programs. Teresa is, we look at this, I think we talked about it this morning, Teresa, a little bit as a family. And I know many people here will vouch. Some families can be dysfunctional, certainly, but Teresa's keeping us on the straight and narrow. She's an incredible student, an incredible collaborator. She's working on many of the youth programs that we're working on in the college. She's doing an incredible job. She's already an alum of UNLV, soon to be a two-time. I think Tim was the only other one who was two-time, but Teresa's well on her way. Please, a warm welcome for Teresa Butler.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. Today I'll be presenting For Youth by Youth, a progressive plan to created by Young Adults in Charge and NPHY Young Ambassadors Program. Let me just get to it. All right. Okay, starting off, we have the Healing Center approach. It is a step up from trauma-informed care. The latter can often attach trauma to the youth, which is why it's now time to recognize youth beyond their trauma. While Healing Center approach is meant to change your perspective on trauma, it also allows both service providers and youth to see ways trauma and healing are experienced together. It starts asking the questions, what's right with you, instead of asking what's happened to you. And the 5 main principles are culture, agency, relationships, meaning, and aspirations. Next, we have Pathway to Trade Schools. We have Young Achievers at NPHY and Hope Scholars here at UNLV that assist youth with getting employed or into higher education. But there's not enough access to trade schools, which are known for being high impact but low barrier. It is important to create these pathways because there's an evolving employment landscape. Traditional approaches do not always equal sustainable outcomes, and not all youth are meant to attend higher education, but should not be limited to dead end or multiple jobs. We do this by building relationships with employers and youth, having funding, and also having the big picture approach. We have to meet youth where they're at by being responsible to individuals' youth needs, wants, situations, and circumstances. Some examples of this is healthcare. We're not limited to doctors and nurses, as there are phlebotomy, CNA administration, all livable wages, and that can be done in 1 to 4 months. We also have the entertainment and hospitality. I believe we have too many connections with the Strip to not network and build these relationships for youth for those non-traditional jobs. Next, we have transitioning out of services. Transitioning out of services needs to be a plan that needs to be thought of from the very beginning and revisited from the time of being serviced. Regardless of when or how a youth come in to receive services, there is a life after homelessness. And we all know that transitioning into adulthood can be challenging for any youth, especially for youth that are receiving services, because they may lack a sense of belonging and a safety net, which can lead youth to experience adult homelessness, criminal justice involvement, and general lack of well-being. We develop successful outcomes by understanding that life after homelessness should be youth-led and thought of from the very beginning. You should feel empowered to make decisions for themselves. It should be support independent living by increasing responsibility and ensure youth have a secure and ongoing sense of connection. So next we have innovation through flexibility. Meeting youth where they're at regardless requires flexibility and innovative mindset. Understanding this will allow you to understand that there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all approach. Expanding access to services should be continuous and always decided by youth. And in a world where homelessness is criminalized, we should have flexible policies built on understanding and not driven by punishment. Youth-led planning and implementation centered around goals should also have the room to be adapted to adapt to youth needs as times change. And lastly, increase flexible funding as it will provide support to organizations that are doing the work to meet the community needs and better position themselves to respond to crisis. Examples of this: investing in advocacy, youth leadership, and research programs, and supportive services that ultimately benefit youth. Lastly, we have expanding and implementing youth feedback. It's one thing to be open to feedback, but it's another to actually take into consideration and implement it to create new systems and resources for youth. We do this by first being comfortable with being uncomfortable, have timely focus groups, one-on-ones, and surveys, and always be open and consistent with communications. We also ensure youth feedback is implemented by always having youth involved in each step of the implementation process. We have to follow through and evaluate the change. And also, I heard something earlier that I've never heard before, and that was service-resistant youth. And I would like to point out that there's no such thing as a service-resistant youth, and we would know that if we implemented youth feedback. So as we leave today, I would like you guys to think about, are you still doing things that have failed youth, and why? Do you have consistent and equitable feedback opportunities for youth? And are you and your staff a safe place for you to give feedback? And lastly, how are you ensuring youth are involved? Thank you.
Service-resistant deans? Absolutely. Service-resistant youth? Absolutely not. Teresa, fantastic. Well done. We were practicing today, and it came off just, I hope, like you wanted it. So, incredible work, everybody. So we've had some great presentations. Lisa, how are we doing on time? We're a little behind. That's on me. I apologize for that. If you look at your kind of agenda for the days, it says we have to have a break now, and I've had several people come up to me and say you don't want a break. Listen, we're going to do it anyways. I understand that. We're going to try to meet your needs, but we're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to get all the panelists up here on the dais, and then we're going to have some hard-hitting questions, some of them personal, some of them professional. Look forward to having everybody back. You're frustrated about the break. We're going to try to minimize them as much as we possibly can. More action. People are like, I want action. I don't want breaks. I get it. I also appreciate all the constructive criticism people gave me over the break. My wife and I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old daughter, and they were telling me recently, this constructive criticism, it really just feels like criticism. Agreed? Understood. So welcome back. We've got a great panel here. They're a little nervous about the personal questions, but we're moving forward with those anyways. It doesn't matter. And we will continue our conversation. So we're going to start with a professional question first, so that we can just ease into this, and then we'll leave some of the personal questions till later on. So I think one of the most powerful parts of the program so far, certainly PowerPoint and hearing from each of the individuals, but seeing the youth and seeing how important it is to include youth in these conversations really is central to the movement, and it's central to policy, government, direct service providers, and everybody moving forward. So as a panel, and I think I'm going to start with my favorite panelist, and Arash said we shouldn't have favorite panelists. He begged me, he said, Rob, please, no personal questions and no favorite panelists. But yeah, but I've got it just the way it goes. So Teresa, you are my favorite panelist, and it's just the way it goes. Feel free to applaud for Teresa if you'd like to. And for some of the youth that you're with as well, and we may ask some of them as well, how can we best as a community incorporate youth voice into the movement and into our policy decisions and into resolving this issue? Teresa.
Well, I believe it starts with, like, wherever there's a conversation about youth needs to be there. It doesn't matter if it's about funding or like fundraising or like whatever. Every part needs to be transparent so youth can be involved and actually make the changes that needs to be made. But I believe there's not enough transparency on like every level, like community, like state, like all of it. It's never transparent enough so we can actually make equitable changes.
So it's inclusion right from the beginning.
Yes.
And it's engagement right from the beginning. What does that look like? What is it? Is it in the strategic planning process? Is it in the youth moving it forward and getting attention from legislators and service providers and policymakers? What does it look like in practice, Teresa? This is not a trick question.
Well, it's everywhere. So it's in the planning process, it's in the outreach, it's in the fundraising, it's all of it. But we do it by first like compensating and listening to our youth and making sure they feel important and like valuable. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, starting there will get us to our goal.
Okay. Do you have one of the people that were on the panel with you that you'd like to name and have them maybe provide a little bit of input for us as well?
I'm sorry. Oh.
So yeah, maybe call somebody out and say because we'd like to hear a little bit more as well. You can come to the mic. Come on to the mic for a second. Yeah. All right, come on in. Yeah. So this is, now, just so you know, we have an esteemed panel, but even people in the audience are open for personal and professional questions. So, yes.
Don't ask me a personal question. No. Sorry, I'm not a panelist, but I just wanted to add on to what Teresa was saying. This is a multifaceted question, so there isn't one way to authentically collaborating with you. So, as Teresa said, it is everywhere. And I would also add being flexible with youth, meeting youth where they're at, which leads back into it being multifaceted. Because some people can do legislative work, some people can do outreach, but that's not, you gotta have little pockets for everybody. That's the only thing I'm gonna add.
Okay. But actively looking for opportunities, right? And anybody else from the group that initially presented that would like to speak on this? No, thank you. Yeah. All right, so let's go to the panel then and let's talk about ways that we can incorporate youth voice and ways that we can incorporate youth into policy and into practice. Howard, you and I looked at each other in the eye. Does that mean something?
We made a connection, so
I don't know what that means, but we'll find out very quickly. Howard?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll just say honestly that there's definitely a lot of room for growth and improvement in this area. Speaking from the perspective of the state legislature, even prior to COVID, which presented challenges and opportunities for participation, it's tough for folks to participate, especially when the policy making is happening, because our capital is in Carson City, far away. Meetings are scheduled, first of all, during traditional work hours. Second of all, they have times that are posted to start at one time, but then you may be sitting there for hours waiting for your issue to actually come up. So there's just some structural barriers that we need to try and address. One of the things that I think that was really good that came out of some of the pandemic adaptation is allowing people to participate officially remotely. Before, it really was, you had to get to the Grant Sawyer building in Las Vegas physically, or you had to be in Carson City. And this time, people were able to call in from wherever, or they were able to come in and participate via Zoom in those official meetings. So that's one thing. We need to just think about those logistical barriers to participation in general, but that also apply to youth. But we really need to do a better job of reaching out and engaging young people in the policy-making process, and as was stated, at every point. So in figuring out ideas, in going through the process, and that we're also opening a kind of a door or a window into that process for folks. What I would say is the number one thing is to only bring something that is informed by the experiences of youth. And so, I was glad to work with MPHY on the bill that I spoke about, because it was informed by experiences of youth. And that was shown in the presentation of that legislation. A lot of us read articles, or we read kind of theoretical things, and then we try and bring policy based on that. And that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to start with something that's informed by people's experiences in the community that we're here to represent.
I'll just chime in on the local government level.
Sure.
How many know how much Howard makes as a legislator right now?
Oh.
0. That's one of the differences between our state government and the local government is Howard and his colleagues in the legislature, they do an amazing job over a 120-day period. They only get paid for the first 60 days, mind you. But when they're not in session, they don't have any staff. They don't get paid to be out in the community like he and so many of his colleagues do. The advantage of the local government is that we're here on the ground every day, and that gives us more opportunities to be out in the community and talking to people, including youth who most need to hear from us. That doesn't mean that we can't do better, because we can. And I think that working with our team at the county, we can certainly do better in incorporating youth into our decision making. One thing that we are doing at the county commission level is taking on, this is my colleague Tick Sagerblum's initiative, as well as Brandon, who works for me for another day before he goes off to do more great work in the homeless space. Championing intern and extern programs for youth. So we'll have UNLV interns working with commissioners, and also we have high school students who are now externing with all of us on the 6th floor. So not that they are representative of everything in all spaces, but at least we have some true youth walking around and working with us day to day.
Yeah, I can jump in here too from the K-12 perspective at the Nevada Department of Education. So we had some funding where we were able to hire actually Teresa for some time before she is advancing in her career. We're super, super happy for her. But she was involved in talking to our school district liaisons, involved in making some planning decisions, helping us determine how the funding should be used. And so what we are trying to do is expand that, right? So that was one voice, and we know that youth experiencing homelessness are not a monolithic group. And so we would like to expand that more to like a council, if you will, and encouraging our school districts to do the same at the school district level to help, again, engage youth from the beginning with the strategic planning, with the priorities, what they should be spending funding on, what they should be focusing on, the supports that they should be providing to youth experiencing homelessness, and ensuring that they are engaged. And also some partnerships is something that we, right, admittedly could do a better job at NDE. And so we are hoping to partner with organizations such as NPHY, not just in Clark County, Las Vegas area, but statewide as well. And so you will probably be, I've been kind of scoping some of you all out, so you'll probably be hearing from me, receiving an email from me in the next few weeks, so that we can start those conversations and ensure that our youth are involved from the beginning and are compensated accordingly. Teresa was not working for free because that is also important, as we heard our youth mention earlier today as well.
I'll offer. Are you going to go next? You want me to go?
Sure.
Okay, so a couple things I would offer. I've worked in the foster care space or serving young people that are victims of abuse and neglect for the majority of my career and over the most, like the last 10, 12, 13 years in the homeless space as well. And I've learned some kind of catchphrases that have really stuck with me, so I will share them with you, is nothing about me without me. And I learned that in the foster care space and try to remind myself and those that we work with about being really conscientious about how to bring young people to the table. But it takes a lot more than having young people at the table for authentic engagement. It's really about creating the space to help young people understand our jargon, our lingo, the ins and outs, and really set young people up for successful opportunities to engage. So it's also another thing I learned, or I really keep mindful of, is the illusion of inclusion. A lot of people do that, right? It feels good to have a young person sitting at the table, but it's just a token approach, right? So like the illusion that you're being included is very different than authentic engagement. And so I will offer today on behalf of myself and as a, working at St. Jude's Ranch for Children, is to commit publicly again. It's a great reminder. Like this takes everyday work to remind ourselves. We all get super busy and are in the system and moving and, and it can be something that we forget, right? And we're working for kids. So, we need to ask them, would this be helpful? Because if not, why would I waste my time building a program if they don't want that, right? And the last thing I will offer is that it is, yes, young people with lived homeless experience, but also it's child victims of abuse and neglect that have that lived experience. It's child victims of sex trafficking. It's adult survivors of domestic violence that can help us and influence the lens in which we see our work. So it's an incredible reminder. I'm certainly inspired to go back and rethink, right? And every day it's just a reminder of how do we make it authentic engagement and nothing about me without me.
Great comments. The only thing that I could possibly add to that would be just be intentional. Don't be an afterthought. I think the exercise, the play that was done earlier kind of showed it being mirrored there as an afterthought. At least on the juvenile justice and child welfare and social service side, we're required by statute to have citizen advisory committees. So we have seats there dedicated for those, and that's intentionality. Whenever we do one of our myriad of planning exercises that everybody loves so much, we also, we call our partners who work with young people and say, we need someone who can bring a voice to the table. And that's a good health check, because the day that they come back and say, I don't have anybody for you, that's an indicator that the system's not healthy.
Yep. I would just say is I've got a very dry sense of humor. It's not really a funny sense of humor, as you all know, but it's a little bit dry.
That's a big wind-up.
Yeah, knock it up. But we've got these fancy degrees, and we've got these salaries, right? We've got these things, and you get to a meeting and you feel like, I really need to. So how do we prepare our community advisory committees, or the committees that are working, or our faculty, or our deans, to be the kind of, to have the kind of meetings and to have the kind of engagement, because I can promise you at a university, we pride ourselves on knowing everything all the time and to be the experts on everything, even more than Teresa or anybody else, right? And then to start, how do you train people and how do you train our community to say, you've got some maybe information, professor, or commissioner or director or what have you, but there's equally important information so that we can have the kind of communication that we want. And I do believe it's going to take some training and some real thoughtful engagement, because many of us, at least we think we understand, right? But the rest of our teams and the rest of everybody else that's engaged may not see it the same way. So am I off base, Teresa, with this, or what's your experience in terms of truly participating and having teams and meetings and discussions that are the kind that Dr. Vela and others are talking about? How do we do it? Because that was really the thrust of the presentation today, was really getting there.
Right. So basically, like, moving forward, checking our biases and like all that good stuff. That's what you're asking. Well, it kind of starts with like being in like this room and like knowing that like, oh, there is biases. Oh, there is adultism. There is issues with engaging with youth. And I think having this conversation will transform like how you go like after this meeting, or but also when it comes to trainings and like moving forward, we have to make sure youth are leading those trainings, because it's our experiences. We know that sorry, I just lost my train of thought. We know what it feels like to be like undervalued and like not being like treated as someone that you would pay to be here, even though we should be being paid. So it only makes sense for us to like start those conversations and really ask you guys to check your biases. Hopefully I answer your question.
It does. It absolutely does. And I think it's a real important part. Gabby, maybe do you have thoughts about ways that we can prepare people for the kinds of engagement that we want? Because it has to be very systematic, or we're not going to get the outcomes that we want.
Sure. That is a great question, and one that I know we are certainly thinking about at NDE and talking to our school district liaisons. I think it's a lot of these I think are adult problems, as we see in the education space. And so, I think it's really going back to the why and the rationale, right? Like, we cannot keep on making decisions for folks and talking at folks and not with folks who are actually, again, experiencing this, who have firsthand subject matter expertise, right? Like, we like to call ourselves SMEs, when we truly do have SMEs across the state that we could be leveraging, and we decide not to. So understanding the rationale, the why, and really ensuring that folks are seeing the benefits of it, right? And so, like, sadly enough, until there is some kind of tangible benefit that folks can see, that then we can parade around to kind of create buy-in, there might be some folks that don't buy in. And so I think, those are some strategies that first come to mind, but something that we need to think about some more for sure, especially for the adults in the system.
Christina?
Yeah, I would offer as a leader, as a human, in order to prepare the table and have an organization or people be open to youth feedback, because youth will put a mirror up to us. And that's hard, because many of us, we all show up because we care. But when the mirror shows us, or the outcomes tell us we're not getting it right, and the outcomes tell us, and they're telling us we're not getting it right, it takes 3 words: a humble posture of learning. And as adults, the adultism, the humility, like, you have to humble yourself to learn from somebody else. So I would just offer that maintaining a humble posture of learning can help all of us, right? No matter our title and our paychecks and whatever credentials, it takes a certain humility to sit across from somebody and listen with an intention to understand their experience, not listening to respond, right? Because we know we can do that, and people do that to us. They're listening to us, but mostly just because they want to think of what to say next. Yep. But when we actually humble ourselves to listen, to understand, we can create a sense of compassion and create space at the table for everybody.
Does somebody have a?
Oh, I just took her tagline, Hero for Hope. Hero for Hope.
Hero for Hope. Yeah, that's right. Right. Anything to add? No, thank you. Yes. Sure.
Hi, I'm Booker Reed. I'm the Youth Engagement Specialist for NPHY, and I have a very unique position with them as far as just kind of being that the conduit from a safe place response, picking them up where they're meeting them where they're at, all the way up to like facilitating a workshop for a life skill as simple as doing laundry or cleaning yourself or getting prepared for employment or completing schoolwork. So I have a very unique position within the agency, and I just wanted to say the youth that we engage with on a day-to-day basis aren't necessarily wrapped around the funding sources or the seat chips or where it all comes from, but they're more so just in their realms. And I think that everyone at this table and panel right now does an exceptional job at understanding that and understanding where those milestones can be achieved and where they're at on a direct base. So just want to say that, and thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Tim, ways to incorporate, when you think about your group that is an advisory council, how do we prepare the people that are working with that advisory council and the people that work in your agency and the people that you're engaged with to be a model for engagement with youth and incorporating youth voice?
Yeah, part of it comes to, I'll start all the way back with that recruiting process. If you're not, I can teach you how to run a meeting, but I can't teach you to care. I can't teach you to be willing to be humble. So you have to look at who you're onboarding into your programs. And then as a leader, I have to take responsibility who I assign those tasks to. And if it's not measured, it doesn't matter. So if I'm not asking the question, why is this the third meeting in a row where our former and adoptive and foster youth together are fate presidents not at the meeting? And we find out that, well, Tuesday at 10 no longer works. Guess what? We make the rules, we set the schedule, can we change it? So I mean, it is, I think, listening, observation, but I'll from a leadership standpoint, see, we got to take accountability for how we set that table and who we're putting around it as a convener.
Yeah, I'd say as we hire faculty in the college, I think universities by and large hire on one criterion, and that's aptitude. What does your vita look like? What does your resume look like? And we look at first your attitude. If you don't have the right attitude, it doesn't matter what your expertise is. We can't really teach attitude. Yeah. We can help you with differential equations. We can help you with statistical methods. But if your attitude's not right, you can't get there in the right place, right?
I have just a couple of thoughts to add. I mean, it goes back to a couple of things. One is leadership that was just mentioned, and the other is intentionality that was also brought forward. I think, the first step to changing an institution is to have, any one person can be a leader in that institution to model a better way of doing things, to explain why they are doing things that way, and to help kind of chart that course. I had an intern during the legislative session that I made sure to really get incorporated into meetings and not just assign menial work, but have them sit in on some of the more sensitive things. And I explained that to journalists that I was talking to. I explained that to lobbyists that I was meeting with. And so I think that's a way that you can start to expand people's kind of understanding. And I think the other thing is just you have to spend time with young people. You can't expect to create a seat at the table on the way that you've done things and that they're going to plug in. So you have to either spend time in advance building those relationships or build something that works for those young people to feel comfortable expressing themselves. And that's the sort of intentionality that you need to have. But again, just one person putting in the time to build something like that can then kind of help open people's eyes to a different way of doing things, a better way of doing things.
I actually want to piggyback off of something that you lost. I just want to add that there are youth that want to be in these spaces, but they're just missing the opportunity. So thank you for giving that intern opportunity, because it could be life-changing, and it's just a different perspective that we need. But it's just the opportunity is missing.
I appreciate that. The one other example that I actually have, so I sit on the school organizational team for Valley High School. And each school has one of these, and in high schools in particular, they have a student representative. But sometimes that student is kind of tokenized, right? Or they just kind of sit there. They're not being offered an opportunity to really get involved. At Valley, they've actually created a tradition of having the student representative be elected as chair and run the meetings. And so instead of just sitting there where they can be kind of off to the side, they're actually centered in that space. And that shows that you're not just there because we have to have a youth seat. You are there because your opinion is wanted and valued. And so there are things, those are examples of being intentional in how you can take a space and make sure that it is more welcoming for young people.
Great. You know, when we're thinking about youth and youth voice, and Teresa and panelists and others, it's important to think about how has the youth experience changed over the last couple years, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the innovations that have cropped up as a result of that. But it'll be interesting, and I'm putting you on the spot, but I did say you were my favorite, so that's kind of how this stuff works, Teresa. But let's talk about that, a little bit about how things have changed lots has changed over the last couple years, and then we'll bridge a little bit to a question about some innovations that have happened over the last couple years as well that may be able to help us with bridging some of the gaps where we have. So youth experience, Teresa, how have things changed over the last couple years?
Well, I just want to point out that I cannot speak for everyone, especially because COVID was an interesting time. Wow. And so because of that, and like the uniqueness of it, it's going to affect everyone differently. For example, I was on campus, I was doing my undergrad, and so my lifeline was campus. Like I lived on campus, eat on campus, like what is anything past Maryland Parkway? You know, that was my life. And so when I got an email saying like, oh, you might have to leave, like the reaction and the resources I need will look very different from a youth that just needed health insurance so they could get help from, like, because they got COVID or because they got laid off, they might need unemployment or what have you. So I think it's just a very unique situation, and every youth needs to like speak up about their own experiences. But my campus was crazy. So
campus is crazy. What other experiences have people seen that youth have reported to them over the last couple of years about how things have changed? Then we can talk about some of the innovations.
I'll offer, COVID, I think, was harder for everybody that has privilege. Our young people have been living with the epidemic of violence and drug use and homelessness way beyond COVID showing up. So I hate to say it that way, but like I would think that a lot of young people are like, yeah, welcome to our world. You're worried about, you don't know when you're going to get toilet paper. Well, guess what? I haven't lived with toilet paper in years because I live on the streets. Right? So I think, quite honestly, it was a lot harder for people with privilege. I think the other thing that it awoken to recognition is that not everybody's home is safe also. Right? The leading up to the things that create a need for, child abuse and neglect response, and youth running away from painful home situations, and sex trafficking and exploitation. All those things have existed before it. It just helped us, I think, a lot of adults who might have not realized, because we live in a world of privilege, because we have a job and we have a home and we have a car, and I could order on Amazon because I have an address to deliver to. I really think it kind of it equalized for a lot of people to realize what a lot of people in our community have been struggling with way before COVID showed up.
I'll just give a good example of that. When school went back into session, or was supposed to go back in the prior year, there were efforts that were made by CCSD to get up and running and across the state. And it became very clear that there were huge inequities in terms of technology and particularly access to broadband. And so there were people in the community and from the state level that put together a task force very quickly to try and address the issue. And it was extremely frustrating. I mean, you'd have service providers who said, we want to help, but also we're not going to tell you which houses we serve or what areas we serve, because we didn't want to give away that kind of information to our competitors, right? And we had others who said, we want to provide laptops, but not those laptops. We have to make sure that they're the exact laptops that fit the criteria. And also there's a supply chain issue, because every school around the entire nation was asking for the same thing. So I think that certainly COVID exposed to everybody the serious inequities that already exist. Like you said, that they were there before. Regular people, privileged people just didn't really understand that they were there all along.
Yeah. Good. Gabby, or Tim? And
I was going to put a positive, something I've seen change. Being a first-gen student here back in '90 in dorms, because the campus was my life. And I still remember my RA knocking on my door and going, "What are you like? Why are you not packed up and leaving for break?" And I'm like, "What do you mean break? What's that mean? There's a break in my housing?"
Yeah.
And did not have anyone to talk to, and were it not for be able to couch surf with local athletes I met in the dorms, I'd have had no place to be. And there was no system, I don't think, to express that back in that time. Fast forward, one of my first meetings with Arash, I think, maybe 12 years ago, was we've got kids that are in the dorms that have no place to be for the holidays. I'm like, this is still a thing? And then I know that, and again, coming back into this community a few years ago, sitting with UNLV, and there is an intentional outreach to make sure that there are mechanisms in place that no young person has to have that interruption in housing and food, because when you are lucky enough to finally make it to a college campus, your sole source of housing, food, everything is this institution. And making sure that carries over those breaks, because your need to have a safe place to sleep and eat doesn't go away because someone has a defined holiday. So I would say that is a definite system improvement. Now, did it take us 20 years to get there? Yes. But it's building blocks like those things I think we can build on. And again, credit to folks in this room for making some of those things happen in the last few years that had lingered for decades.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many calls that I'll get over the holidays. And thank goodness you get them, because sometimes you didn't even get them before, right? That people didn't have a voice and they didn't have an opportunity. They didn't think, well, I can reach out and talk to somebody about this. And then, yeah, housing can stay open and policy starts to change and people stop in and say hi, because it's not just having the dorms open, right? It's food, it's company, it's relationships, it's engagement, it's opportunity. That's all a part of that. It's a great example. Yeah.
And on that note, I would like to shout out to Hope Scholars for expanding and maintaining housing for the campus students.
Yes.
Because they're awesome for that reason.
Yeah, there's a representative here from Hope, right? Where are you?
Sanibel here.
Nobody wants to stand. People get very shy. Gabby, did you want to talk a little bit about education and what you're seeing and maybe either innovation? Well,
yes. So in the K-12 space, presumably we are seeing a higher and increased number of students and families experiencing homelessness. I say presumably because, again, identification is an issue. It's not just an issue in Nevada, right? It's national, and so it's a national concern that I know we are trying to solve at the state educational agency space. But with that, talking about exacerbating inequities, surely are seeing that in the K-12 space and education as well. When we talk about learning loss, we talk about the need for accelerated learning. I think as an opportunity, though, for that is being more, we talk about being intentional, is being more intentional about the educational services that we are providing to all of our students, and in particular, our students experiencing homelessness, that are for example, newly homeless now because of the pandemic. And so what we're trying to focus on is encouraging our school districts to ensure that they are implementing practices and interventions that are evidence-based. And what I mean by that is interventions and practices that have proven to be effective. We do not have the time have experimental right, learning for our students. We need to be focusing on what we know has been proven to be effective for students and ensuring that we're using our funding and our time and capacity implementing those things. There is, again, it is so urgent and there is no time to say, oh, we think this might work, we have a hunch this might work. No, we have research out there. We need to be using data, research, and evidence to make decisions, and I'm particularly talking about the K-12 space, but that applies in general outside of that space as well. And so that is something that I know we are definitely encouraging and providing guidance on at the state level, internally, getting better at that as well as we continuously improve, and then also at the school district level.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I think that's a good bridge for us to think about what are some, in the presentations that we heard today, there's some incredible opportunities ahead of us, and there's some incredible progress that's been made. And so let's talk a little bit about what we see in terms of the policy space and government space and education and for individuals to become more resilient and more effective. What kinds of things, what kind of opportunities lay ahead that we should be moving forward that are evidence-based, that are ways that we can make a big difference? Because there's a lot that's been already accomplished, and it's tough to get to where we're at. We've succeeded there. How do we move from there?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple things, and a lot of these build on remarks and presentations from other panelists. One of the things is we know that, I think Dr. Vela said it, housing is the issue, but it's also the solution. So we've got to deploy that. I think one of the big picture opportunities that we have is all of this additional funding that has come down from the federal government to state and local governments. And, it is a challenge, so we don't want to use it in ways where when that funding dries up, there's a service or something else that then disappears. But there are a lot of other things that we can invest in, and that we can help kind of build up to, that we can use those resources for. And so, I think it's important that we continue. I think we've been working on this, right? Because we're trying to get those dollars out the door as fast as possible, but also in a way that is evidence-based, that's going to have impact. And we've got to coordinate, because we've got money that comes to the Department of Education, we've got money that comes to the state, we've got money that comes to the local governments, we've got money that goes to the local school districts. And so we need to try and coordinate quickly to maximize the impact of those resources. So I think that is one of the key opportunities that we have, but it's also a challenge. Affordable housing is a challenge generally, but having housing and supportive housing, transitional housing, getting resources in to make that happen, and figuring out also what are those policy barriers or those policy changes that can help get that housing out there, I think it is a critical piece. And then just doubling back on another thing related to some of the changes we've seen, we saw support systems across the board get disrupted as a result of the pandemic. And we've seen the translation in impacts to mental health and behavioral health for everyone, but including for young people. And this just goes back to what was discussed earlier, in that it's a huge issue that we need to address. One of the things that we've got to do, governments can be good at this, is pointing fingers. One of the unfortunate side effects of federalism is that there's always you can point to a federal government or local government and say, this one's not me, it's them. We have, for physical health, we've got, essentially UMC here. We have a baseline, a safety net, that if you cannot afford care, there is a place that you go, because we have determined that it is unacceptable for you not to get care. It's unethical. We have a crisis happening where that's not really the case for mental health. And we are passing people around, and when you have a health emergency, you should not be in the juvenile justice system or the child welfare system. You should be in the mental health care or behavioral health care system. And so I think that's a challenge, but I think it's one that we all agree on. We need to come up with a solution that makes sure that safety net's in place so that they're getting the care that they need.
Yeah, and it's being proactive about that, right?
Yep.
Because you can't wait for the crisis to happen and then try to react to it, right? Commissioner Jones, talk a little bit about how you see this. You've got some great partnerships. Clearly, you're directing funding in ways that are making a difference, and you're thinking in advance about that. What are the opportunities that we have as a community and as the county and as Southern Nevada and Nevada that are ahead of us that we can kind of think about?
Well, I think Assemblyman Watts really hit the nail on the head. This is a unique opportunity, and I think everybody recognizes that if we screw this up, then we've screwed it up for good, right? And if we fix it, then that's historic. And it's not just in the homelessness space, not just in youth mental health space. There's other, economic development. I sit on the LVGA, and we talk about how every time there's a recession, we talk about expanding our economy, and then when gaming comes back, we say, oh, we don't really need that anymore, right? I mean, this is the opportunity to fix that problem. Mental health has been a huge problem, and sometimes it seems like it's just so obvious what the solution is. Just give you an example, and again, this is not a finger-pointing thing, but we've had a situation where our facilities here for youth mental health, the state hasn't been able to hire mental health professionals because they don't pay well enough. We have the same issue at the county. And the obvious solution to that is, well, just pay better, right? Yeah, it costs money, but just pay better. And seemed obvious to everybody, but until the governor announced a week or two ago that that's what they were going to actually do, it hadn't been done. And so I think that we need to take a look at some of those things where it's kind of obvious, and Christina kind of talked about it in her presentation. Housing, it's obvious, right? We just need to do it. And in order to do that, we have to get our own way to a certain extent. But I will say the other thing that we really have to address right now is NIMBYism, right? County is pushing forward with its initiatives on affordable housing, and we're trying to make sure that we get that distributed out throughout the community so we don't concentrate poverty in a particular area or don't concentrate affordable housing. Except neighbors don't like it in their backyard. And so we as elected officials have to have the intestinal fortitude to say, yes, in my backyard, including in our own backyards.
Right. And make no mistake, the pressures are incredible because individuals put extraordinary pressure on elected officials and make promises that they'll keep, right? That you'll never get elected again, that will make your life miserable, and have incredible resources to make that happen, right? And so in the college, we're dealing with different issues, right, around affordable housing. And it's a nice intersection between economic development, business, policy, you name it. But you see the realization and the impact that this has, right? Because what you're saying, Commissioner, is real. And as a community, we have to think about, yes, what's happening in our neighborhood, but we also have to think about the greater good. We have to have some empathy, and we have to think about solutions, right? And this is, Dr. Vela, what we talked about earlier. We need it, but also understand there's an equal and opposite force that says, right, NIMBYism and those kinds of things as well. Yeah. So thoughts about opportunities and ways that we can move forward. I know you talked in your presentation about affordable housing. What other opportunities do we have?
Well, I think, just give you one example. So the Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Campus is right next to CSN. Mm-hmm. And frankly, there's been discussions for 3-4 years about better utilizing that 88-acre campus over there, right? Some 1960s buildings that are single story and they're decrepit and needs to be redone. And so several of us had gone up to Reno a few months ago to take a look at what Reno had done, Washoe County had done, working together. And they did a great job of working together as local jurisdictions who don't always work together very well, and working with the state to try and improve access to mental health and homeless facilities up there. And so that's something that we're working on, working very closely with the state, and trying to make sure that we collaborate in the right way and address the real solutions. Because again, we elected officials, we politicians, we often think that we have the magic answers to everything, but if we're not relying on people like the people in this room who are on the ground every single day, then we're not going to actually solve the problem.
Right. Kathleen, thoughts?
I would offer that, I guess just to echo what everybody has said, addressing homelessness requires an infrastructure of support services. So we can house people, which is a right. Housing is not a privilege. It is a fundamental human right to have a place to live and sleep. But beyond that, we need to, yes, address our mental health issues. But when we have a failing mental health system for youth and for adults, then we see a drug issue. And with opioid epidemic and all of these things, and so drug treatment, so just having access to basic kinds of services that seem so basic, but are really transformational for people, is absolutely part of the way we end homelessness for youth, right? If you're cold and lonely and don't have, and you're brokenhearted and you have some mental health issues, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world why people use drugs and alcohol to escape. But there is research, there's proven, work on how to help people move through recovery to go out and be wage earning, tax paying, contributing members of society. It's not enough to be a person that's formerly homeless or a victim. We need people to become survivors, and that's not good enough. We need them to be thriving members of society. So how do we get there? How do we get there?
Yeah. And clearly, Christina, it's investing in people, and it's in giving people opportunity, and it's in workforce development programs, and it's in partnerships between industry and government and all parts of society that are saying yes, because that's what each and every one of us wants.
Absolutely.
Right? Everybody in here wants opportunity and access and engagement. As a first-generation college student, I can tell you, right, I didn't do it on my own. People gave me access and opportunity and second chances and third chances and ways to get involved, right? And I'm being gentle with myself. It's probably more than second and third chances, right? So, and it is those kind of programs that are necessary. Tim, let's talk about opportunities. What kinds of other opportunities are there in this sector as we move forward? Because there's a lot to be thankful, and there's a lot of good work that's already being done. It's not dismal, but yet, we're not out of business. And we want to be out of business. So what are the opportunities?
I think the opportunity in the Las Vegas metro area in Clark County is a good one. And I say that because we continue to reinvent ourselves and step up and address things in new and different ways. We're 79,000 affordable units short heading into a pandemic, meaning that individuals spend 50% or more of their earned income on rent alone. And so what happens is looking at this in a different way. Housing is healthcare. Individuals recover from health issues, mental health relapses, treatment better if they're housed, rather than having to go through a program, complete it, and earn housing. If you house them, it's healthcare. It works. So you take that pivot. If we look at all of the individuals that we could reclaim into our workforce, that's economic engine. So we look at it as an economic development standpoint. If individuals have more free income to spend on things other than just their rent, it pushes the engine of this entire community through. We need different consumers for different pipelines in order to stabilize the two-legged stool that is Southern Nevada economically. So I think we have to just pivot and look at this differently. And I'm grateful for all the young leaders in this room and not so young leaders who are willing to make those pivots and look at things from systemic approaches. Because look, we've made bold statements at the county that we want to help, create 5,000 housing units. That's more than we do, typically in 3 years. And we want to do that. But there's a $500 million regional request that went to the state, to the housing coalition that many people in this room were a part of helping put together. It sounds like a lot of money, but that barely scratches the surface when you think about 80,000 units that we need, and that number is ticking. So I think if we look at bringing in healthcare, economic development into the conversations that are typically advocate-based, and I think it's just us maturing and reinventing that conversation as a community, which is something we do very well. So I am optimistic that we will. There's a lot of opportunity here for that conversation.
And Tim, when you think about the workforce needs that we have, right, and the opportunity, the huge opportunity that we have, right, to generate that workforce, to create opportunity, and it feeds off itself, right? If you have a good paying job, if you have workforce development, if you have access into the workforce, you can have a home, you can have, right, and especially if it's affordable, right? And you're more likely to be less transient, and you're more likely to go to do other kinds of things as well, right? I mean, these are the kinds of things as we work with youth in the community, and it's a small extent, but we're doing our best, right? We ask them, to design their life, and they want what all of us want, right? They want an opportunity to have a partner and to have a family and a pet and have access to the kinds of things that we all enjoy and want as well. So there's huge opportunities that economic development and business, if you want to look at it from that vantage point, right, can really generate as well. And
Let's go there for a minute and talk about. I'm not just part of the social service system. I'm part of the academic system. So let's go there for a minute.
Good.
Let's talk about stackable, transferable credentials that move with you. We ask young people to come out of high school and have their life path figured out to try to get a career and hope it pans out. Yet we know that one of the fastest growing business sectors that we have in our community is going to be personal care attendants into that health care space, because we have a gray tsunami of individuals aging out of the workforce here. Yep. So let's talk about getting you into a 4-week basic credential program, and then allowing you to walk that into community CSN for a 2-year program, and then walk that into the nursing school. Never losing momentum, but giving people the ability and a clear pipeline to develop a career without having to have it all figured out. I want to go to nursing school day one.
Yeah.
And we hold a lot of those cards, and we make a lot of those rules up to say, but you got to start over because you moved a couple of blocks from CSN to UNLV. I think that we again can look at things in a different way to help us address problems in a different way.
100%, Howard, and then I'll come back and talk about the inadequacies of higher ed and inaccessibility and things like that. But Howard first.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just wanted to make one other point to Tim's, which is, he brought up thinking of housing as healthcare, and so we also have to, as we reinvent that, we have to rethink how our healthcare systems are also investing in housing as part of that. And I would just put a finer point on the conversation that you were just having. Not only is economic development important for housing, but we should look at housing as part of economic development. So flip that around. I can't remember, I just heard this a day or two ago from somebody, and I can't remember who it was, but they said that, remember, a house is where a job goes to sleep. Yep. So again, we just have to flip some of these things as we're looking at those connections, and so that not only are they not siloed, but we need to be feeding in from the other direction. If you want to make an impact on healthcare, then we need to also be investing in and making housing central to that. Same thing for economic development.
Fantastic. Teresa.
I'd like to add something. You keep hearing housing equals healthcare, and I want to say that's not always true. For example, if a youth comes in and you're like, oh, we have a place to for you to live, but you just need to get this job and whatever. That can be really stressful for them if they don't know how to maintain it successfully to be like sufficient at it. So that's why it's important to really talk to youth and like, okay, what do you need? What makes you uncomfortable? Where is a safe place for you? Because sometimes they like, oh, maybe I'm used to being in a shelter. Can we do like an independent living program for a while until I'm ready to be on my own? Because that's why it just ultimately like goes towards having a conversation with youth and making sure we're meeting with them where they're at.
Great point. Gabby, opportunities.
So just sitting here, I think one of the biggest opportunities that I see is, when Tim talked about that systems level approach, is an opportunity for collaboration and stop working in silos, right? Which I know we I think want to do, but sometimes it's really hard due to capacity and everybody's just kind of like running and, we know this work is urgent. I think there's definitely an opportunity to create even stronger partnerships and going back to that word intentional, being more intentional about the partnerships that we are creating. And so that's probably the biggest opportunity that I see, and learning more about what folks are doing within their respective subject matter expertise. And so I know that, for example, there are probably a lot of folks don't even know what like a State Department of Education really does, right? They know about school districts. Every time I say I'm in education, they're like, oh, are you a teacher, right? It's like, no, like there's more, right, like to it. And so just really talking to each other about the great work that we are doing and seeing where there are synergies, as talked about earlier, and points to really and truly collaborate and build upon those partnerships. I think that's a huge opportunity that I know I see. And then, Tim talked about kind of like the higher ed space, and I just want to also say that in K-12, we need to do a better job as well at supporting students to ultimately attain their goals. I know there are some new, this is not my level of expertise, but I know our Office of Career Learning and Adult Educational Options that houses our CTE, so our career technical education. I know that they are working on ensuring that there are more flexible, I would say, pathways, and so that like you don't have to go into 7th grade, right, like knowing what you want to do, and then if you don't have those opportunities, by 10th grade, you're like, oh, actually, you can't be a part of this program anymore because you didn't enter in 7th grade because maybe you didn't have the social capital to even know that you needed to. So I know that team is working on some innovation there as well.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about collaboration now. I think that's just essential, and we're seeing some really great examples from the state to the county to private businesses to public, you name it, working together. And Tim brought up universities. Universities pride themselves on being exclusive, right? Just think about what that means today, that the best universities in the country and in the world are the most exclusive. And one of the things we talk about here is we believe the future of education is inclusivity. And it's about changing the way we do things, the kinds of degree programs that we have, the kinds of opportunities that we create, what we teach young people that are coming into college, regardless of where they come from, right? That career paths aren't linear, that they're nonlinear, right? Ask everybody on this panel. They've been twisted and turned, and myself included, right? When I go to school, sometimes they say, how did you end up as a dean? And I say, I don't know, but be careful, right? Be careful. That could happen to you, right? So keep your eye on the prize, right? But it is about partnerships, and it's about collaboration. And when Clark County and groups come to the university and say, we need more people in nursing programs, or we need them stackable programs, or we need accessibility and we need entree, then we need to be responsive. We have to be responsive. And we have to find ways then to collaborate and engage. So what are the big collaborations that need to happen moving forward for us to be successful? And I don't know, yes, Teresa.
We don't collaborate. So it needs to be everyone, between every nonprofit, between nonprofit and the justice system foster in school education. There's no gaps needs to be. what's the word? There should be no gaps, and we should have safety nets. And so I think just actually having the conversation and like building together. For example, I think the biggest one is foster youth versus homeless youth, and that concept blows my mind every time I even say it out loud. Like, I don't understand why there's a gap, and because of that, like, we lose a lot of youth to homelessness because of that. So I think even like collaborating and like getting together would be like the biggest steps.
Great, fantastic. People are snapping. Yes, absolutely. What are the big collaborations?
Well, I think local governments have to get together, and we've been doing that. The city and the county haven't had a great relationship for a long time, the city of Las Vegas.
Yep.
And everybody knows that. And it's been literally personality conflicts at the elected level.
Yeah.
The staff have more or less gotten along pretty well. And it's really about people taking the first step. And so city and county, a couple of us on the county commission, a couple of city council folks starting meeting earlier this year with senior members like Tim and his team, and having conversations about affordable housing, because we all know we can't do it alone. A lot of our social services are located in the city of Las Vegas. A lot of projects that we funded are in the city of Las Vegas. And so those discussions have been fruitful. I will say, it's great to get together, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to put money on the table, and we're still working through that part of it.
I have a question, actually. Who takes the first step, and what ideas do you have to resolve that conflict?
Well, I mean, look, it's on each of us, right? I mean, I took the first step, but I took the first step with people on the city council that I knew. Brian Knudsen I knew before this, and so he and I tried to start working together. Others on the county commission, on the city council, also made those connections that had served in the legislature together, and so they already had that existing relationship. So it's on us, right? It's always easier, and I did it. You know, if my first year or so on the county commission, I blamed the city council for everything that they were doing and pointing the finger at them. And since then, I've kind of realized there's some blame to go around, and we need to be adults and sit down and figure it out.
It's amazing, and when we talk about collaborations, everybody in this room has a relationship with somebody they really care about that they don't talk to anymore. Everybody does. And it does become this instance of, sometimes you don't even remember, and if I asked each and every one of you what that issue was, sometimes you don't even remember, sometimes it's on the tip of your tongue. But eventually somebody has to reach out if that relationship's ever going to improve, and it's ever going to heal, and it's ever going to move forward. And when we think about youth and we think about partnerships and the kinds of things that we're working on, there's people waiting for us to get over those issues, those interpersonal things, those collaborations that are counting on us to get over it. And so that's really important. Christina.
I think from the how to do the teaming, I mean, besides being a person committed to being a yes, do you want to be at the table? Do you want to solve a problem? Yes. St. Jude's Ranch for Children is also positioned to be a yes, right? So we run our organization in a way so that we can pivot as needed. And we don't always get it right, but showing. But beyond that, I really do follow the tenets of collective impact. And I think it's important, if you're not familiar with the tenets of collective impact, it's really starting with a shared vision. And I'm not sure that, at the macro level or at the micro level, do we have a shared vision about, here we're called today because we have a shared vision to end youth homelessness. And so the next tenet is, identifying data points that help us identify, are we closer to that or are we further away from it? And then it takes mutually reinforcing work. So it takes all the nonprofits and local government to say there's enough work for everybody at whatever level we're at. The question is, how do we do our work in a way that's headed towards our North Star, but that's mutually reinforcing? And I know these things are much easier said than done, but it takes just relationships. The beauty is that we live in Southern Nevada. We don't live in some communities where it's so hard to know who to talk to. I'm sitting up here with some really awesome people, right? And I think in other communities, you don't get to just sit next to your assemblyman or your county commissioner. In Southern Nevada, we do have that, and it's an incredible opportunity, which means we can do mutually reinforcing work, but it takes conversations. It takes trusting relationships that say, I don't know if I trust the system, but I trust you. I trust you, and we'll get through this together. So those are just some approaches in terms of how we move forward and the things that guide me that might be helpful.
Thank you, Christina.
Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah, I think we made a pivot maybe 7 years ago, and it was small, but I think it helped a lot. We used to only fund nonprofits for a widget they could turn out to local government, right? So you show me that 10 young people came through and got served, and then I'll give you 10 units of pay. We didn't cover overhead. We didn't invest in the nonprofits in a way that allowed them to go build that social capital with folks, because they had to be so busy. They couldn't invest in their own leadership teams because all they could hire was more case managers, because the only thing we paid for was widgets of intake forms. Social capital is critical, but social capital takes physical capital to build, because I have to be able to give you the bandwidth as a service provider to go to things like this, to be on things like this, where we can create those opportunities for trust, so then we can try that trust out in the field with several $1 million behind it and some housing units. So I think we've made that move. I think that there are places where some philanthropic organizations definitely led the way on that. So I hope that every local government goes back and makes sure they're re-examining what their overhead reinvestment rates are, what those types of things, so that the agencies that are doing the work have the bandwidth to build social capital.
Love it. Absolutely. Gabby?
Really like where this conversation kind of, because I think oftentimes when I'm in conversations about systems level kind of like change and like thinking, everybody's kind of like talking as if like they're not a part of that system, right? So like people are talking like the state can do this, the state can do that. Gabby, you are the state. Like you can influence the change that you are talking about, right? And so I do think that it comes down to relationships. I think that it does come down to, we talked about being humble, right? And so taking the first step to build those relationships. I'll give you one example. The State Department has not always had great relationships with our local education agencies or school districts, right? That is, I'm being transparent right now. It took some time to build that. And, we are a small state in the sense of like, we only have 17 school districts for our state public charter school authority. I can get on the phone and talk to literally every grant manager in the state, every school improvement director within the state, and start building those relationships. And so now, my team has done, what I think is a great job at that, where we have districts coming to us and talking transparently, saying, hey, Gabby, I need to get into contact with this person. Can you help me? To build those relationships, and then that I think has lent itself to more collaboration just with our school districts, and hoping to do that with more, again, CBOs, the state agencies across the state as well. So that's a little piece that I will add to that.
Love it. Thank you so much. Assemblymember Watts. That's what everybody will remember.
So, I think we build the alliance with a shared vision, and then we have to build the will to make the change. Because after we have that, in place, we can identify the changes. But a lot of times, the reason that they haven't happened is because they're out of the zone of comfort. They're out of the zone of what is considered easy to do, or even what's considered possible to do. But that's because of limitations that we have basically self-imposed. And so it gets the different people that have those levels of discomfort to lean into that to make the changes that are necessary. For example, we run into so many problems, right, between the different levels of government, between rules, and we just say, well, these are the rules, so we can't go. Well, then we need to go and advocate to get those changed so that we can do the things that we need to do. We need to. One of the other issues that we have, particularly from the government perspective, is even within budgeting. This is another silo thing. So not only do we have federal, state, and local governments, but then we have different departments, and those department budgets are separate. And so even if you do something that frees up resources over here, you can't necessarily move it over to the place where you want it to go. And so, when it comes to doing those things, when it comes to raising the revenue, because this state has historically underinvested in everything, these are all things that we need to have those folks not only agree on the goal and the vision, but when it comes to taking the steps to get there, the folks that normally kind of would sit back and point to someone else or be like, this is not my thing, they need to lean into advocating to make those decisions and those changes that need to happen.
Yeah, love it. I mean, I hope you see the will is here, the partnerships are here, the desire is here, the engagement is here, right? It is exciting, and yet we've got some things to do. Like you say, when we talk about rules and we talk about attitude and we talk about relationships, but those things are happening. And we're excited about the opportunity of, right, a Rosh being out of work, right? And we're talking about what's he going to do next. Is it cryptocurrency? Is it some other social issue? And we're going back and forth, right, trying to make sense of it. But really, I mean, the effort and the desire is here. The collaboration is here. These are great opportunities. And so really appreciate all the panelists for taking time today and having the conversation that we had. So let's give them even a standing ovation. Feel free to give them a standing ovation. They deserve it. Yes, people are jumping out of their chairs. Absolutely. Jumping out of their chairs, very happy. 1:45, we'll be back here to continue the conversation. I'm sorry, Lisa's giving me, so come back at 1:40 if my math is correct. We will start at 1:45. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for your participation this morning.